San Mateo County Harbor District Board of Harbor Commissioners meeting for March 16th to order in South San Francisco. And we have a roll call.
Commissioner Caravano.
Here.
Commissioner Chancarelli.
Present.
Commissioner Matoush.
Here.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Here.
Commissioner Brennan.
Here.
All right, we're at the point in the meeting where we take public comment, and I do have some public comment slips. First up, Jim Merlo, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jim Merlo. Here speaking on behalf of San Mateo Safety Officers Boating Association, which is an association that all of us have created. At this time, I just want to let you know how we feel about some of the negotiations that have been going on. We don't want to lose anything that we already have. When our negotiations started, we were told that it wouldn't affect us negatively. The commission didn't want to affect us negatively. And at this point, I kind of feel that that's what's happening. I pretty much know what I made in 2015, and I would really not like to go backwards from that point going forward for this next contract. So I just hope you take that into consideration. And we do a lot of stuff out there, a lot of stuff, and we put ourselves in harm's way a lot. And I just hope you guys realize that when you start to negotiate and figure out how you want to take care of your employees. So thank you.
Carrie Smith, please.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioners, General Manager, Mr. McGrath. San Mateo County Marine Safety Officers Association was founded to have a voice for the Harbor Patrol that often don't. We'd like to take that voice to educate and help share with you, the Honorable Commissioners, how valuable we think we are, how valuable we are to the community, our allied agencies, and to everything that is Harbor District related. We're the face that helps the child with the hook stuck in their finger. We're the person that consoles the family that we've brought and recovered their deceased family member to them. We don't get grief counseling. We don't get all these things that we should do. We're unicorns. In contract negotiations, what I've seen and I learned in college, that statistics, you can change the numbers to show anything you want. What we're seeing is we're going backwards. Let me tell you, most of our people are working paycheck to paycheck. We have spouses and second jobs so that we can send our kids to Little League. We're working 12-hour shifts because we're understaffed. We've been understaffed for a number of years with the turmoil on the commission. We have great hopes with General Manager McGrath, who's done an excellent job in his tenure so far, and we're very positive. But I need to tell you that morale is at an all-time low. We're unicorns. Am I an overpaid bathroom cleaner? Most certainly. Am I an underpaid boat operator who responds when Coast Guard won't to save lives, to meet the charter boat who has a heart attack, to take them back and treat them to their family? You can't compare us to anybody. We shouldn't be going backwards. We've had 2 raises in 14 years. Now COLA is considered a raise. COLA is how I give my kid milk, how I buy peanut butter, how I afford my school lunches. And I'm not the only one. The respect that we've earned, that Commissioner Carley and General Manager McGrath shared with us of the Mavericks contest, cannot be bought. Respect is earned. We have garnered the respect from every agency in the peninsula for the amount of search and rescue we do. Do we do it every day? No. Do we do it every 3 days? Probably. Our life's on the line when we do it? Our own life's on the line? Yes, they are. How am I going to take care of my son and my family if I go out when there's 20-foot seas and I have somebody that's now not as competent and not as trained, but I'm expected to work with them, and I get hurt? And all of a sudden, the 10% healthcare cut has turned into 30% over 3 years, and I have to file bankruptcy to afford my injury. It's very real. We're the face. We want you all to know that we are the face of the Harbor District. You guys do a wonderful job. We have contract employees that get paid great money, that have great packages, and I'm sure they're worth every penny of it. We have a general manager who has a marvelous contract, as we've seen in the papers and we've seen in reality. All we're asking is that we don't go backward. We need to go forward. Have any of you looked at rents recently? $3,500, $3,000 for a single room apartment. Do you know what we take home every 2 weeks? I might take home $4,200. Add childcare onto that at $1,000, add baseball onto that, add clothes and food. I'm going backwards working for this district. I've done it for 16 years. I have passion. We're a team that has created passion because we believe in each other and we believe in the Harbor District. And we just believe that we should be respected for that, we should be compensated for that, and we should be able to move forward from here. Thank you very much for your time.
John Draper.
John Draper, Assistant Harbor Master, Pillow Point Harbor, district employee for 31 years. What Carrie said and what Jim said are true. I mean, 31 years I've been with the harbor, and negotiations that we're going through and the morale issues are at an all-time low. We were told that it wasn't going to affect us negatively, and what we're seeing on paper so far, it is. We're going back anywhere from 10 to 18%. And it's not right. I mean, it's not right for myself. I do okay, just okay. I'm not making a great living, but I can pay my bills. My kids are finally out of college, but we got a bunch of younger employees who are putting their kids through grade school, going to go through high school and college, and they got to look at their future, and it's not right for what's going on. So just do what's right in your heart, and you know, maybe we can all move forward, and maybe the morale issue will get better, but it is pretty bad right now. So that's all I have to say.
Dave Arrington.
Hello, Dave Arrington, 9.5 years, San Mateo County Harbor District. What John and Carrie said and Jim is all true. And I'm a renter. Unfortunately, I couldn't buy, and I'm struggling. You know, I can't go backwards in this economy, and this economy is getting better. I feel I'll be going backwards with my employees. So my longevity at this district is uncertain, and that's tough because I enjoy my job. I like what I do. I like who I work with, the people I get to experience and contact, and the things we get to do is unremarkable. You know, a great experience we can do and help people. So with that being said, just take it in your heart and look what we can do to keep us with a strong workforce, and so we can move forward. Thank you.
Mike Williams.
Mike Williams, I work at Pillar Point Harbor as lead maintenance, and as such, I'm like the second in command there. I just want to reiterate most of what they said. I'd like you to see us. We are the first responders for fires, for medical, for innumerable incidents, things that break, sewage spills, everything. We get exposed in the course of our everyday jobs. And I don't think we need to go backwards on paying for our medical. If anything, it should be better for everybody who works there. Pretty much all I got. Thank you.
Dante Madrigal.
How's it going? Thanks for letting me speak tonight. My name is Dante Madrigal. I've been a Deputy Harbor Master with the Harbor District for 15 years. I'm very concerned because the conversation we're having about benefits is not sustainable or realistic for our team. Based on the data from the last Bureau of Labor Statistics report, fishermen and fishing-related workers suffer the second highest rate of fatal occupational injuries, about 75 deaths per year for every 100,000 workers. To put this into perspective, this is far higher than the risks that police officers and firefighters take, who are ranked 15th and 18th on the list, with about 10 deaths for every 100,000 workers. We are the search and rescue teams that go out in the worst conditions to save commercial fishermen who need help. In the past 2 weeks alone, our harbor team has dealt with a surfer's death, a missing person who just washed up on the beach, a vessel fire, a fuel spill, and 2 boats that broke their moorings and landed on the beach, all during extreme El Nino weather. Beyond the physical jeopardy that we regularly find ourselves in, we are regularly exposed to chemicals, fiberglass smoke, bodily fluids, and the like. We've all heard about the City of San Jose, Muni, BART, and other agencies that have unsustainable benefits packages. However, the danger and the risks involved in our jobs on a daily basis, due to the nature of our profession, are very, very different. I'm proud to be a Deputy Harbor Master. I started when I was 22. This is my career. My wife's pregnant with our first child, and I'm happy to put my life on the line for the harbor community and for fishermen. I'm willing to do that. And with the rise of the cost of living in the Bay Area, and you guys talking about slashing our benefits, it's pretty discouraging. And so we've already lost 2 of our seasoned patrolmen. They bailed 6 months ago. And I just please ask you to don't disrespect the nature of our work and jeopardize our team. We have great guys that have been here for a long time. And if our team falls apart, the harbor is going to fall apart. Thank you.
On to the consent calendar.
Sorry, President Mateusz, I did not turn in a speaker slip, and I apologize for that. But if I may, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Randy Murphy, who I brought on board as an interim director of operations while we recruit for the permanent director of operations and director of administrative services. Those recruitments are now out in public, and they're on our website as well. But Randy comes to us with extensive experience in both municipal and public sector management, as well as public works. So familiarity with the public contract code, for example, and that will be of great benefit to us as this commission looks at a very aggressive program of projects lining up for the 16-17 year. Felt it was necessary to get a jump start on that. I'm very pleased to have Randy on board for us right now. So, Randy Murphy, thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering why we had no staff recognition on here tonight. All right, Randy, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
As you know, there's no shortage of projects. We look forward to you working with Steve, Glenn, the entire staff, everyone, and helping us push the district along in a positive direction.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Okay, on to item C, the consent calendar. I have had a request to pull item 6.
I'd like to pull 1, 2, 3, and 5.
So is there a motion to accept item 4 on the consent calendar?
I move that we accept item 4.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan? Aye. Commissioner Farley?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabana?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Okay, item 1, bills and claims in the amount of $155,917.06. Request to pull the item.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that I had an opportunity to review the bills and invoices at the Harbor District's administrative office last week. and found that the staff is doing a very excellent job at organizing our bills. And just wanted to mention again that it would be really helpful in the future if we could get a spreadsheet that shows our utilities by month for the last few years, so that we could get a sense of what's happening with our utilities. There's some erratic billing, and I think we ought to take a look at it. Thank you.
Any other comments on item 1? Commissioner Chang-Crowley?
Just a quick question for Steve McGraw. I was just looking at the 3 items for travel expense and meeting expense reimbursements. Do we have a policy in place as to what constitutes a valid meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the expenses is for commissioner, which is fine, but I just am wondering why the rest of, I never even knew that such a meeting would even exist. So, and the expenses over $1,000. So if there's a meeting that should go out, and maybe I missed something, I'm not.
Right. Be happy to broaden the outreach. I should have done that on this particular meeting. I'll broaden the outreach and make sure that all commissioners are aware of the opportunity to participate at local, state, and federal levels on occasion.
I think that would be good. Thank you.
Mr. President, I have had reviewed the bills and claims for the period ending March 10th, 2016. And I'd like to make a motion that we approve the bills and claims in the amount of $155,917.06.
And I'll second our treasurer's motion.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan? Aye. Commissioner Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Paranano?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Okay, on item 2, we had a request to pull the minutes of meeting for January 20th.
Yes, on page 4, page 2, at item 8, it lists the committee assignments, and I'd like to ask the staff to double check, but I believe that the communications marketing committee was Brennan Bernardo, not Brennan Paravano, but it's possible that I misunderstood that, but that was what I believe happened. So if we could check that out.
Check that out. We'll report back, and we can either bring the minutes back if they need to be corrected. But we can correct them if they're misstated, inform the commission and the public, make sure that they're up as approved. Is that okay, or do you want to bring them back for approval if they're incorrect?
So they would get corrected and then posted as corrected. Yeah, I'm fine
So
with that.
the motion would be to approve the minutes as may need to be corrected based on the record.
I move that we approve the minutes unless they need to be corrected, and then they will be published corrected.
Thank you.
Second.
Are you seconding?
I'm asking for a second.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, let's go roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan? Aye. Commissioner Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Paranano?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Okay, item 3, meeting minutes of February 3rd. Request to pull, and we have commissioner comments.
Yes. On page 3, we have item 8, which is the pedestrian crossing light at Capistrano Road. And I just wanted to point this item out because I think there's been misunderstanding about what the board's direction was. There was a motion by Paravano and a second by Bernardo to refer this to the Public Safety Committee for further discussion and maintain the light at the crosswalk, and it was unanimously approved. And I'm pointing this out because I think that there might have been some misunderstanding on the part of the staff that the board directed the committee to meet on this particular item. So that was all.
I have one quick comment.
Commissioner Jane Crawley?
Mine's just a quick comment. So it looks like for that particular meeting, Steve, Tom's name is the president, he would be signing off, but I presided over that meeting, so should I sign off on that, or is that something that the president, and it doesn't matter to me, I was just curious since I presided over the meeting and the president was not in attendance at that time.
This is a question for me, Steve?
Either, yeah, or,
Which is a,
You may maybe.
What is the question is whether you
She
can
wasn't
sign
there.
the.
because I presided over the meeting and the president was
I
not
see,
here.
I understand. There is no problem with the president of the commission
Perfect.
signing the minutes that he did not attend, and nor is there any problem with him voting on the minutes.
Okay,
If he
perfect.
didn't attend. If he would prefer not to, he doesn't have to, and you could in his stead.
It doesn't matter to me, I just wanted to clarify, thank you.
Mr. President, I believe on the same item number 8, that there was an additional public comment that is not listed here.
Oh. Yes, there was a member of the public who was in support of leaving the light
Right.
in place. And I can't remember her name, it was,
And you know what, she didn't fill out a speaker slip.
well,
see.
we should probably add that another member,
I didn't know.
okay. What-
I think that it's important, I agree with Commissioner Caravana that we need to have that.
I think she did fill out a...
I thought she
Yeah,
filled out
she
a
did.
card too. I think she
Yeah.
did.
I'll look through all of them again.
Did she mention her name?
She
Let me-
said her name and I couldn't understand what she said. I think in the
Okay.
beginning. I think this is the one that, yeah.
She was near the beginning, yeah. Or she may be at this first or second one, I can't remember. But I think it is important to reflect that public comment. Thanks for catching that,
Yeah.
Pietro.
Yeah, I've got unnamed.
Yeah,
My-
but it
my
doesn't
notes,
matter.
unnamed Supports the light.
I think she is, member of the public has to be on the mailing list also.
Didn't
No.
get that
No.
part. I just
No,
got,
they
I
don't-
just
if
got
they choose
unnamed
not to
supports
put
the
their
light
address
safety
on.
Oh,
concern.
okay.
She
So
might
we-
not have wanted her name to
Okay.
use. It's not required to
Right.
give your name, so we shouldn't expose her name if she didn't want her
Right,
name.
so
Probably should.
we can amend the minutes to include that additional public comment?
Yeah, I think that's important because she's not someone who comes regularly, so, and she gave another viewpoint, which,
So, a motion to approve as corrected.
so moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Bernard?
Aye.
Commissioner Byrne?
Aye.
Commissioner Crowley?
Aye.
Commissioner Caravana?
Aye.
President Matrush?
Aye. Okay, item 4, meeting minutes of February 17th. Discussion or comments, please?
You've already approved that
Oh,
one, President Matrush.
okay, good.
No,
On to
5.
item 5. Did we have a request to pull 5?
I requested, yes, I requested 5. Can
Okay.
we get a staff report?
Sure.
Last year, shortly after I arrived, we had a large write-off that had been pending for the whole fiscal year. This year, as I mentioned in the staff report, our write-offs are running far, far better. We believe it's because of improved attention to collections and collection processes. Compared to last year, we're running, as I said in the staff report, we are doing better by, $58,000 less this year than in prior 2 years, roughly about $58,000. It would be a good practice to do bad debt write-offs twice a year. We, as you know, with what's been going on with staff, we were a little slow, but I think I would like to do one more write-off before the end of the year and get us on a December, June schedule. But I think it does mark something that has improved. And I think credit has to go not to me, but to the collection staff, Katie Michelson and Emily Cooper and David Doyle and people that are following up on that. But we made an effort to improve it a few months ago, and I think it's very improved. As the staff report says, declaring these bad debts is not forgiving them. It's just recognizing that we think that they will be uncollectible and will allow us to keep our books in better shape.
One thing that puzzled me is why aren't we seeing the names of the vessels and the debtors? So we have an idea about that. And then there's a small discussion about potentially having an aging report with this. So we know how many are 60, 120, 180 days behind in payments.
As far as why it's this way, unless there is a reason that council might have, I have my least favorite answer for you, which is that's the way we've always done it. So if that remains the only answer to that question, we will start including the names.
How do my fellow commissioners feel about names or an aging report?
Well, can I comment on that?
On the aging report, I actually, if I can find it, here it is. We will start including it, and I actually brought with me, I had them dig up some information today about aging accounts, but maybe we want to handle the names first.
So I was looking at the last page of this report where you have the 2015 write-offs listed without names. And I noticed that some of the amounts were really high, like $5,565. Does this mean that was an amount owed by one tenant, or is that representing multiple tenants?
I believe each one of those probably represents a different vessel, but I can double check that. And yes, it means that to get to that amount, somebody was very behind in their slip rate, not just 30 days.
So I guess the point is that it seems like it never should have gotten to that point where somebody racked up $89 in debt. And so I'm wondering if we could see these reports more frequently. The other thing is this data isn't that useful if we can't see it as compared to like the previous 3 to 5 years. If we could see a spreadsheet that shows a comparison of previous years, it would be more meaningful because then we could see how improvements were happening. And I haven't really thought about the idea of including the tenant's name, so I'm not sure how I feel about that yet, but it's an interesting idea. I would just not like to see us have a tenant rack up almost $9,000 in debt, because obviously that's not working for the district. So it seems like we need to keep tabs on this more frequently, so maybe if we saw like a quarterly report and then had some previous year data included with that report, kind of like we're doing the rent report, maybe it could come out at the same time.
Well, hopefully the write-off report will get smaller and smaller. And I don't think staff disagrees with you at all that letting one particular tenant get up to close to $9,000 is acceptable. So.
But I do want to recognize that this has gone down significantly because our write-offs, like before I got elected, were through the roof. I mean, it was like, I seem to remember well over $100,000. So this is certainly a big improvement, so I don't want to minimize that, but I still think, like, you know, Steve is indicating we could get it even lower. And what's the deal with deposits? How much of a deposit are people paying? Like, if they're paying us a reasonable deposit, how are we getting into this situation? Could you guys explain how that works?
Our deposits are 1 month, and if someone is more than 1 month behind.
Why are our deposits only 1 month? Is that
part of raising fees?
Couldn't we have it like a 3-month deposit or
You
something?
can set them any way you like in raising fees.
Is that something that does anybody know if other harbors do a 3-month deposit? It just seems like the cost is so huge if somebody abandons a vessel, that a 1 month deposit is just like a drop in the bucket with what we're saddled with if we have to deal with an abandoned vessel.
To be honest, Commissioner Brennan, 3 months deposit would be a drop in the bucket if the vessel is abandoned.
Well,
If there's
true.
value, then we could have a, lien it, take ownership, sell it. If there's anything left over, then, I mean, we could at least wash out that way. If it's truly abandoned and not worth selling, then we can dispose of it through our DBW grants.
But if we have somebody that misses 3 months, and we have a 3-month deposit, by the time they get around to missing 3 months, I mean, could we,
Another way would be looking for a credit report, a credit history too.
are we doing credit reports now?
No, we don't do
Well,
credit
what are
reports.
we doing to preempt something like this?
It sounds like we're not doing anything.
Well, I would disagree that we're not doing anything. We've had some improvement, but I certainly fully agree that this is not a perfect record. It does indicate that there are people that are still further behind than they should be. The collection procedures are attached where people are getting their 30-day and other notices. But the fact that when we were happy about the improvement shouldn't be confused with that there's more to do. What I have is, I had run for us today, if folks were interested, which you obviously are interested, 30-day or more past due comparison this year to last, which is sort of a snapshot of people that are heading this way. I think that the improved collection practices, when people get late notices, of course, they always get a late fee. But when they start getting their late notices at 30 days, I think that message gets out and is part of this improvement.
Is there a reason why we're not doing a credit report on anybody that wants to be a permanent tenant? I'm not talking about a weekend person who comes in and just wants to board their boat, but if you were gonna rent an apartment, you would have to have a credit report.
Well, not necessarily.
I think the only issues are, details that could be worked out. It has to do with, who pays for the credit report, what credit report do you use, training your staff to use them, properly storing and shredding confidential documents and their handling. Those are all technical kinds of things that, I think could be worked out.
Well, since we have staff dedicated to dealing with tenant leases, wouldn't it make sense that they would be trained in how to do a credit report? And of course, the credit report is typically at the cost of the tenant, not the district. So that would be part of the lease agreement, or however you guys are doing it. I feel like if we got credit reports, we would not have nearly as much money being written off per year, and we'd have better quality tenants.
I believe that we're getting a little wide of the topic here. If you want to bring this back for discussion, bring this up with rates and fees and perhaps a change to implement in the coming year. But I think we're providing some direction to staff that we want a little more information on this. And we've got to figure out a way to revisit our rates, fees, and make a decision with the public present and knowing, so that we don't spring Brown Act, we don't spring credit reports on them without knowing. So could we bring this up again with our discussions of rates and fees?
Or maybe give direction to the staff to look into different options on how to prevent, well, you're never going to have 100% prevention, but at least reduce this. And I agree, staff has done a great job in doing this, but just to answer the commission's questions, but bring a report that talks about that. But that is separate from actually approving the write-off of the $24,000 and
President Mateusz, would the commission like me to orally recite the information I do have about the comparison of 30 days past due.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so for Oyster Point Marina, in 2015, we had 52 accounts that were 30 days or more past due with an amount of $86,504. However, $23,000 of that, $24,000 roughly, was Spirit of Sacramento, so, which, as you know, we're in a recovery effort on. So if we take that out, we were 51 accounts and $63,000 in total that were 30 days or more past due, meaning it was due on the 10th and the 11th or later. For February of 2016, we reduced that. That was now 39 different late accounts. The total was still was 83,000, but if you take out the Spirit of Sacramento, it had been reduced to 33,000, which is about a $29,000 improvement in folks more than 30 days. For Pillar Point Harbor, we had 64 accounts that were past due in 2015, 30 days, for about $72,000. And this year, 2016, we had 90 accounts that were past due for $95,000. Although there's been, I think, some quick speculation that that probably has to do with the economic hardships of the crab season, other economic factors. So I don't know if it's fair to say that our collection efforts are falling apart in Pillar Point or if there's more hardship. But the numbers did go up at Pillar Point.
Could we get that report?
Every month.
Oh, we're going to get that report every month.
We plan to put that in the, it'll be in the Harbor District, Harbor Masters activity reports every month along with that other information.
Okay.
Do the tenants, are they required to have insurance on their vessels?
Yes.
Yes,
Is that commercial?
I said that once, yeah.
I didn't know about that exception.
I think, again, we're starting to roam a little bit wide of our topic. So this is something we should bring up as we need the policy towards who we're letting to, the number of people that are in our harbor. We should be able to track. I know personally as a slip holder, I get a pre-printed statement from your marina program asking whether I've sent in my insurance or not. So I just don't know what happens if you haven't sent it in. But we're going wide of this topic, so I think getting back to our write-off policy is just to approve this $24,000. Staff has direction on additional things we'd like to see and be brought back. And we have direction that the commission would like additional structure with regard to rates, fees, credit reports, and insurance. So can we go back to item 5 and talk about our a motion to approve the write-off? We have a motion to approve.
I move that we approve $24,905.48 in bad debt write-offs.
Second.
Is it a resolution?
Thank you.
Is it
Roll call,
Excuse
please.
me, is it adopting a resolution?
And adopting resolution, where's the number?
0616.
And I second that.
Roll call.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Corrales?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabana?
Aye.
President Mateo?
Aye. And a request to pull item 6, the investment policy, and I believe that we'll start with a staff report.
Yeah, if I may, this is just a requirement of the San Mateo County Treasurer's Office, and I think they're doing it based on state law governing counties' investments. We do not invest money in the local agency investment fund, like many agencies. We use the San Mateo County Fund, which does, to my last check, pay somewhat better interest, although it's quite low. And every year, they are required to pass an investment policy. It usually, much of it, I think, conforms with regulations in state law. And they also much new to me. I haven't seen that before. They also request that we acknowledge receipt of their policy, even though, of course, we don't actually make any of the investment decisions. But I guess they want to make sure that we know what their policy is. So what I'd like to do, though, is instead of the resolution that's submitted, I'd like to suggest that it be a simple motion that the San Mateo County Harbor District authorizes Pietro Parvano, District Treasurer, to execute the acknowledgement of receipt of the San Mateo County Investment Policy Statement for 2016.
So moved.
I have a question. Why are we not going to use the resolution that was provided? Why are you recommending not to do that?
One, there was a typo in it, and two, I believe District Council had stated that it didn't, there was some discussion as to whether a resolution was needed or appropriate.
And one of the typos is a sort of a significant sort of flip of who's in which role. So while a resolution is not required at all, it just seems simpler rather than to try to amend the resolution to make the language correct. So whereas the San Mateo County Treasurer has requested the Board of Harbor Commissioners. No. So, sorry, not that one. There was another one. Anyway, it's not a requirement, and it seems simpler rather than trying to rework the reso as once published to simply pass the motion direct to the Treasurer.
All right, can we have a roll call on this issue?
We don't have a second.
We don't have a second? Can we have a second on the
I'll second.
explanation provided by staff? All right.
Mr. President, before we, on the resolution 716, the last, therefore be resolved.
Yes, that was the one.
That, yeah, is that what you're talking about? Okay.
That was the one.
But
Yes, thank you.
We're not using that resolution.
Right, so we're not going to use the
We're not using,
Right.
okay.
Thank you.
All right.
So we'll try for a roll call on item 6.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
Aye.
Commissioner Valley?
Aye.
Commissioner Paramano?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Okay, discussion on item 7, discussion regarding locating a copy of Exhibit 1 of the JPA agreement, master plan for the development of Oyster Point Marina Park, prepared by Daniel Mann, Johnson and Mendenhall. Discussion and implications of not having Exhibit 1. May we have a staff report?
There isn't a staff report because it's an agenda item I requested.
All right.
Right.
So staff didn't do a report.
Right.
But I have attached a commissioner report, and essentially the situation is this. We have a JPA which is attached to your packet, and the JPA has attachments 2, 3, 4, and 5. This is the JPA everybody's been looking at for years with attachments 2, 3, 4, and 5. But attachment, which is called Exhibit 1, is not part of the JPA that we've all been looking at for years. So, as it turns out, my understanding is the City of South San Francisco is also looking for Exhibit 1. So our staff has been looking for Exhibit 1, and South City staff has been looking for Exhibit 1. South City put in, as you know, a really large PRA request, and one of the things they want to find is Exhibit 1. If you read the JPA, it references Exhibit 1, and Exhibit 1 is clearly an important document. It's foundational for the JPA, and I've included quotes in this report where the Exhibit 1 document is discussed. It's a master plan. I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
It's a master plan document. I have talked to some past employees that were with the district, I don't know how many years ago, and they seem to recall that there was a master plan document as well as a engineering document, which I think we have found the engineering document, which is a, kind of a dense document. So we have that, that's been scanned, and I believe that's going to be put on the district's website. So far, all we found I got a copy of this map that you guys have in front of you called Master Plan from BCDC, and I believe that Stephen Miller also found the same map. Interestingly, though, his version is from a different iteration of the master plan, and the version that I understand Stephen Miller provided has handwritten Exhibit 1 on it. The version I got from BCDC does not say Exhibit 1. And it's my understanding that what this map is one page of a master plan, which would be Exhibit 1. So it looks like we found one page of a larger document, which still needs to be located. And I believe that probably the only place we're going to be able to get it would be with the Division of Boating and Waterways, because when the master plan was first created, it was in conjunction with the Division of Boating and Waterways. They had a different name at the time because that was a long time ago. But it was a joint document according to the JPA between the Division of Boating and Waterways and the City of South San Francisco. And so since the city can't find it and the Harbor District can only find one page of it, I believe that it's possible we might be able to locate it in the archives of the Division of Boating and Waterways. It's also possible that BCDC may have it somewhere but haven't found it yet. So this is a really important document, and clearly the city wants it. We should also want it. It is critical to understanding the JPA. So this agenda item is purely just to bring the board up to date on the situation, and I would hope that the board would agree we should direct staff to try to locate the full document. And if you want more detail, I can get into more detail.
Staff, do you feel so directed?
I have, I don't know that we haven't found the full document. We've got an original document that includes the JPA and exhibits 1 through 5 as originally presented. And in that document, there is only one page of Exhibit 1. It goes from the JPA to Exhibit 1 to Exhibit 2, which is the beginning of pages of construction cost estimates. So I've got nothing that says that the master plan has not been located.
So just a question. Never have I ever heard a master plan described as a one-page map. So that's a little hard to imagine how that could have been the case, especially when you look at the engineering plan, which is at least an inch thick. It doesn't make sense that the master plan would have been a one-page map. I mean, that makes no sense at all. So I do agree that it probably was a page out of the master plan, but I think we're missing the actual document. And if you read through the JPA, it does make it clear that it was a bigger document than just a one-page map. So I think it's debatable, but I think there is a very good chance, especially since people seem to remember it being a larger document, that there is the full document somewhere. And it doesn't have a cover sheet. I mean, it doesn't have dates on it. It has nothing. So it can't possibly be the master plan. If the attorney, Stephen Miller, found the original document, does that mean that it has original signatures on it, or what are we talking about?
So, you know, I concur with you that it's odd to title a master plan, but it does appear that the final, what's marked as a final as signed October 12th, 77 JPA bound together includes just one page as Exhibit 1.
When you say signed, do you mean you have the actual original document?
Well,
not a scan or
as
copy?
with many aspects of the JPA, lost perhaps to history, it's notated as final as signed, although the signature page is unexecuted. So I don't know where the signature page is. The executed version of the signature page is not included in what purports to be the finalized signed document. I don't have an explanation for that.
No signature page. Okay, so.
There was a signature page, it's just not executed.
Oh, so it was a draft before the final.
It's marked final as signed,
So it's not.
and it
a
is not
final.
signed.
Okay.
I don't know, I have no other explanation. It's from 1977. I can't explain that discrepancy.
So what I have been told is that it's a standalone document. It has some density to it. It's not a one-page map, which makes sense if you read the JPA and the way that the master plan is described. I really think it would be in the best interest of everybody for us to continue looking for it. Is there any interest on the part of the board to get the master plan? I mean, South City definitely wants it.
Can I ask a question? Has the liaison committee meeting been scheduled?
I've talked with both members of the committee about a potential calendar for that, and we'll be getting that out once I can confirm a couple of things.
Because we're now in the first quarter, almost
Right.
done with the first quarter of the year.
Right.
I mean,
Like-
there's, has
yeah.
not,
I'd
yeah.
like to see that all happening in the month of April.
And
One-
on
one-
on that note, I just wanted to pick up on that. It's going to be very hard for the liaison committee to have a meeting about the JPA without the master plan,
Right.
which is why I think we need to find the master
So,
plan.
so the copy that I've got is actually stamped and recorded. So what we could do is go to the county clerk recorder's office, look at the microfiche perhaps, and that should have the entirety of the document, and that will tell us.
I think that's a great idea.
We'll do that.
Well, is that the direction of the board?
What about the Department of Boating and Waterways? Do we need to ask if they've got a copy in our financing options?
I think we'd probably, it would be much more expeditious to go to Redwood City and.
But I'm not ruling anything out.
Right.
Well, maybe we could start with the
Three-pronged
county
approach.
recorder's office, and then if that doesn't pan out, we could move on to Division of Boating and Waterways.
Staff is in agreement?
Yep.
Any further regarding item 7?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, item 8. Division of Boating and Waterways, retirement of debt, provide direction to staff and finance committee. May we have a staff report?
Thank you, President Mateusz. I worked through this, and I would have liked to have been able to put some slides up on the screen. Unfortunately, we have some technical issues. So it's known to this commission that beginning in 1976, we started entering into agreements with the Department of Boating. It was then the Department of Boating and Waterways, or no, in fact, then it was navigation and something else. Then it became the Department of Boating and Waterways, and then in 2013, it was merged into state parks as a division, an autonomous, semi-autonomous division within the California Department of State Parks and Recreation. Over the course of time, we borrowed a total of $20.277 million. We have a balance left at a current effective rate of nearly 4.6%. And through careful budgeting over the years, that the principal on that loan has been reduced to a little under $5 million. In our reserves, and as a part of the agreement with the Division of Boating and Waterways, we have a restricted reserves established to ensure that we've got an annual principal and interest payment, much in the way that a renter might be required to place a first and last month deposit. So we've got a restricted reserve established at $1.8 million. As we start preparing the budget for 16-17, in a status quo situation, we would be obligated to pay $1.4 million of principal and interest by December 31st of 2016, after which the balance would be approximately $3.8 million. One of the things about having this loan is that it does require that we seek review and approval of all real property matters with the DBW. And without that debt, the role of DBW in that would go away. Starting from this point forward, moving forward, under status quo of continuing to pay our debt through 2019, we pay a total of $579,000 in interest. We currently have reserves of approximately $16.4 million. 3.7 of that is committed for various purposes, but can be repurposed. 5.1 is assigned and may be repurposed at the direction of the Commission, and $5.8 million is unassigned. So in developing the budget for this coming fiscal year, we've recognized that the principal and interest payment to the Division of Boating and Waterways would be the single largest payment that we would make during the course of the year. And so that prior to finalization of the budget, much further discussion, we felt it prudent to bring the matter to the board, given, again, that through the careful budgeting of this commission over the years, that principal has been reduced to under $5 million, while simultaneously reserves have been increased to over $16 million. And I would say that going back a few years, we would not be in the position that we are today to be able to suggest that at some point in the near future we might consider retiring that debt, because the reserves were lower and the principal on the debt was higher. But we seem to be at that sweet spot right now. So in reviewing the options, staff and looked at 5 various options. There may be others that we haven't considered, and certainly there are permutations of each of those. And option 1, status quo, we leave the loan as is. We would pay the principal and interest payment of approximately $1.4 million before the end of the year, and reduce the principal owed by almost $1.17 million due to the fact that we'd be paying about $200,000 in interest.
I have a clarifying question. I have so many different versions of these documents because we got new ones today. Which page am I supposed to be looking at?
The staff report has not changed.
I'm talking about the spreadsheets. Is this
Okay.
in the spreadsheets?
Yes. If we look at the spreadsheet, you did receive a revised version today. I had inadvertently placed some numbers in the 2016-17 column when they should have been in row, when they should have been in the 2015-16. So, but at this point, the narrative remains the same. So the second option would be to retire the debt in 2015-16, i.e. before June 30th of this year, using the district funds. We could utilize some of our restricted reserves, our unassigned reserves, and retire the debt. And as you can see from the revised spreadsheet set out, we would, if we were to pay that debt by April 30th, for example, pay $75,000 in accrued interest. If we were to pay it off by June 30th, if it took a little while to get all our ducks in a row, so to speak, and paid it off prior to June 30th, which is the assumption made in the preparation of the budget that we'll be discussing in a little bit, we'd be paying $112,000 before the end of the year in interest. So that would be option 3 would be, or actually that's a variation on option 2. Option 3 in the staff report does say paying it off in 2016-17. In fact, they really meant to say that was paying it off June 30th. Option 4 would be to pay off the debt on our regular schedule, i.e. by 12/31/16. In that case, we would have accrued an additional, we would be paying $227,000 in interest, but the principal remains the same, of course, of $4,953,000. Option 5 would be to retire the debt by refinancing the loan at a lower rate. I know there's been discussion about investment advisors and bond counsel. This amount of debt is seriously not worth the cost and expense of bond counsel, but certainly should this be the desire of the district, we could issue a request for proposals for a private placement of that debt, to retire that debt to the Division of Boating and Waterways to a lower rate of possibly 2.5%.
I have a question. So when we've discussed refinancing and the need for the financial advisor or the bond counsel, it was with the understanding that we were going to roll the debt from Division of Boating and Waterways into a loan that was also going to help cover CIP projects,
Right.
which we don't have funding for.
Right. So for the purposes of moving forward, certainly that's an option that we could do. My understanding also is that the direction of the commission was to hold off on taking any action until the new general manager arrives. As I look at this, I see large reserves, I see low debt, and I see a developing CIP over the next 5 years that will need potentially some financing, but we also have very strong reserves to at least get us through the next year. And it's in the next year that we'll be doing a lot of the planning for future capital improvement projects. So retiring the debt today does not have any bearing on our ability to go out at some point in the future and seek additional funds to do a very aggressive or significant capital improvements plan. So this is simply looking at a snapshot in time of what we're faced with today as we look at the development of the 2016-17 budget.
Commissioner Chang Crawley.
Thank you. So I was looking at this report vis-a-vis the first look budget of 16-17 and the CIP plan, taking into account the unassigned reserves of about $5.8 million. And so I had a good conversation with the general manager today, and my understanding is that the first look budget does not, it only gives us the option 2 scenario. And I just wanted to get the full picture to see if we could also have the first look budget, see how it looks like with option 5. Not saying that we would do that, but I just feel like I'm not sure that we have the full picture. And I'm also going to talk about later on when we get to the agenda item about the CIP, capital improvement plan. I wanted to make some suggestions to possibly look at how we can allocate some of the $5.8 million of the unassigned reserves into some of the projects that might need more funding. So my concern is that I don't feel comfortable approving this in its current form, because I don't think that this report has one scenario and not other scenarios like refinancing and then looking at options 3 and 4 vis-a-vis option 5. So I don't know how long it would take, and maybe there's this, I don't know if we got that today. I didn't get a chance to look, but I haven't reviewed it in detail for sure.
Based on our conversation today, I did look with Glenn at the various options and looked at how to find a snapshot of what the impact would be on the 2016-17 budget. So if we took option 3 as in the 16-17 budget as our starting point, we looked then at options 1, 2, 4, and 5, and what would be the change in our operating net as a result of either of those other 4 options. Our operating net, as proposed in the 16-17 budget, is actually showing an operating net of $2.3 million, largely because of the fact that we would not be making a $1.4 million payment to the Division of Boating and Waterways. So if we went with option 1, status quo, our operating net for the year would change from $2.3 million to $960,000. If we went, so that's a drop because that's reflecting the fact that we would be making that $1.4 million payment. If we paid it off even earlier than option 3 suggests, then our
which would be option 2.
Yeah, option 2. Then our operating net would actually increase a little bit to reflect interest savings. If we went to option 4, where we waited until the end of the year, then obviously our operating net would decrease because we would not only be paying more interest, but we would be scheduling a payment out of 2016-17 operating revenue. And then if we went to option 5, which reflected a continued process of payment to retirement of the debt by 2019, but did that at 2.5% instead of 4.5%, then we would be scheduling a payment in 16-17. It would be a smaller payment reflecting the lower interest rate. So while the net operating revenue would drop for the year, it wouldn't drop as much as if we were making that payment with a 4.5%. So the net operating for the year would be a little over $1 million.
So point of order.
And you have this spreadsheet up there.
I have the spreadsheet, but talking about numbers like this really doesn't work in a public meeting.
I understand.
We need
I wish we'd had
charts and graphs, visual aids.
I agree.
Okay.
This is crazy.
Okay.
We can't process information like this. We need more visual aids.
Okay.
And the public would benefit from that too, and that's what we've always had in the past when we've discussed our issues with reserves. And in fact, one of the things I will talk about, I hope I remember to when we get to the budget, is the lack of charts and graphs. And we went through a lot of struggle and effort to get our finance director in the past to include all kinds of really helpful charts and graphs, and she did that. She put a lot of work into it, and it was super useful. And I don't see why we can't just take those same charts and graphs and plug in our new information, so we have that sort of help, because this is really difficult to digest in a meeting.
And we'll absolutely, we can address that at the budget
I
discussion.
asked for that.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Thank you. I'm just going to echo Commissioner Brennan's comments in that different people process information and numbers differently. I myself am a visual person, and I really would also appreciate, I like how the narrative is written out like this in paragraph forms, but I myself really would appreciate kind of almost like a visual infographic style financial communications piece in terms of communicating our finances. I am more of a visual person. I need to see bars and pies and things like that. That helps me a lot rather than more narrative style. That's just me.
No, very good, very good.
I'm fine with this, Steve, but I agree, because this is, I mean, I understand what you're talking about, but I think that having the visuals will be very helpful. And so, can we direct you to do, I don't know how y'all want to proceed.
Absolutely. I mean, the recommendation of motion is to provide direction to staff and direct it to come back to Finance Committee and then back to the Harbor Commission in April.
And I just want to make sure.
Absolutely, I hear this loud and clear.
Okay,
The other
great.
thing is, I'd like to see perhaps like an option 6, because if we were to, for instance, take option 2 or 3, just spell it out for people to see. We're still open to get financing for anything we want on any project.
Yes.
And just as long as people are aware that paying off the debt now could allow us to make decisions that affect people in this room. And there alone will speed up that process. We can still take out as much money as we want in loans on either harbor to fulfill our capital improvement needs. So if I could just see option 6 so that people understand, paying off our debt now does not preclude us, because we're in good health, from going out and doing something else.
So through the chair, one of the things that I had talked to the general manager about is the other item on the agenda about the capital improvement project plan. And so so maybe there are some things that we can look at to use the unassigned reserves to go towards that and see what we've got left over as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's work on number 8, and then we'll close that out.
Yeah.
The general manager has direction to bring us back.
I have one last comment with direction. We were told, and we've discussed this repeatedly in finance committee meetings, that the board was going to receive a draft reserve policy, and we have not been provided with a reserve policy draft, and I don't think that we should be moving ahead with spending down our reserves until we have a reserves policy. And so I'm hoping that can come back quickly. And then the last thing is, you know, we did give direction to staff. We didn't say wait. We actually voted on this. We voted to put out an RFP for finance advisor and for bond counsel. If our new general manager is now deciding that we're not going to do what the board voted for, which was to put out 2 RFPs, then I'd like to know that we have somebody with really good financial experience advising the district, because what I'm hearing about our reserves today in the board packet isn't jiving with what I've been hearing about our reserves for the last 4 years. So it makes me wonder how this huge shift in perspective on reserves could happen overnight. And I need to feel confident, because what I'm hearing today is not jiving with what I've heard in the past. And if what I'm hearing now is correct, well, that's great news, but it's so radically different from the information we've been presented with in the past, where we were told that our reserves, we were going to run out of reserves. We've been shown all these charts showing by what year. All of that stuff is documented in our workshops. How could it be that suddenly now we don't have that problem? And if that's the case, that's great, but let's look at the charts and graphs that show us that, and look out for the next, 10, 20 years to see what's going on with that, because we have a lot of employee liabilities, and I want to make sure that we're not spending money that we need to have set aside for our employees. And I'm very, I want to be very cautious about that.
So Sabrina, quick question. For the RFP, what was that for? I thought it was, and I don't know, so I'm asking for some historical context. Was that for the refinancing, or was it for the whole plan?
We approved 2 RFPs, one for bond counsel and one for financial advisor, and actually Stephen Miller recommended that, for a refinance. And we were going to roll the loan, the Division of Boating and Waterways loan, into the refi,
right,
and take out additional money so that we could pay for so we could actually get some projects done, which, as everybody knows, we haven't been getting projects done. And a big part of that is because we're just barely, paying our $9 million in budgeted stuff that we have to do every year. So there hasn't been money available to do the CIP projects based on what our past finance director was telling us.
Well, based on what I've seen, it looks like we have about, and so you answered my question, thanks, 16-ish to $17 million of reserves, of which 5.8 million are unassigned, which means they could be allocated to the CIP plan projects. Right. We just have to decide, so I'm just trying to get clarification.
Somehow we need to bridge the gap between what we were told last year and the year before with what we're being told now, which was that we didn't have that money available.
My source for the reserves was the reserves per the adopted budget, and that was the starting point.
The 15-16 adopted, this
Yeah,
13
or
14-15?
First of all, I'd like to...
That was what was presented by the last finance director that we had.
Right.
I'd like to clarify...
Which we...
It was the 16 million.
Yeah.
I'd like to clarify one thing for Commissioner Brennan. The GM doesn't decide not to follow commission direction. My understanding has been that the direction was to wait until the new GM got on board. Okay, so, all right, so I misunderstood. I'm sorry about that. If I could just speak to the reserves part a little bit, there's a couple of ways of looking at the health of an organization, and one is how many projects are you doing, and one is how big are your reserves. And this organization has been building its reserves, and in the 15-16 budget, there's a very clear graph that shows the growth in reserves since a low point in probably '08, '09, where the reserves were somewhere around $9 million. And over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, we've managed to grow those reserves to $16 million. And so that's why I came to you with a discussion about the DBW, because we did have those healthy reserves.
Yep.
It seemed like a logical thing to do.
Well, if we could see the historical data, so we can, that's what we're missing. We're missing these charts and graphs. Right, you're showing us, but we don't have it.
Yeah, it was in our.
15-16 budget.
It's not in my board packet.
No, but it
That's
was
what
in
I'm
a
looking at.
previous
Okay.
board packet, I
We need
thought.
it for today,
Okay.
including today's
Okay.
information, and then how many years does that go back?
2005.
Then
All right,
back
it
to
seems that we've
2005.
got
Direction.
staff direction on item 8, and we'll revisit this at another time as soon as staff finds it immediately
Correct.
able to function. We've got the sooner we can make a decision here, the better, because every single day is, $638, $18,000 a month. It's costing us to not make a decision.
So I want to make it very clear that I agree that we did, but so thank you, Steve McGraw, for taking the time to talk this, about my concerns.
Can I ask, is the direction, I'm a little unclear, what was the full direction?
The direction is to review this, to clarify the staff report and the recommendations, to bring it back, is it through the Finance Committee to the board?
No, to the board.
So what this staff report says is it's going to come to the Finance Committee meeting, which is on Thursday, and of next week.
I don't, do you have
It
enough
won't be ready
time?
Thursday.
It won't be ready by
ready.
Thursday.
So I would
But we'll
want,
get started on it.
And I think it's really critical that we have a reserve policy in place. We shouldn't be doing things to the reserves without a policy.
We'll get
All
working
right,
on a
but then
reserve
So
policy.
there's
Glenn-
also the pictograms,
well,
graphs.
that's
Yeah.
one thing. I would like to see the
graph.
first look budget with option 5 is for the refinancing, how much money we would save. Just, I'm trying to get a fuller picture.
Okay.
So you have the current budget, the current first look budget with option 2, which is pay off the debt in using in the fiscal year 15-16. I would like to see the first look, another first look, a second look budget, whatever y'all want to call it, with option 5, what that looks like with refinancing of the debt from 4.6% to 2.5%.
I would like to see that as well.
And along with the graphs and the pie and
And
the charts.
I'd also like to see the refi include options for additional funding for some of our capital improvement projects that we need to do. So some variation there. I thought we were going to do that when we were going to hire, with the RFP, we were going to hire somebody to be our financial advisor, which Stephen Miller recommended we do.
Just to clarify, because now you've twice suggested that that was my recommendation. I did not recommend specifically that you hire a financial advisor. My recommendation was that if you wanted to hire a financial advisor, you should do so through a competitive RFP process and not merely hire a firm, because there are lots of firms out there and you should.
Right, that is what you did, and that was done at a time when we were being presented with one option only. And my understanding was what you were saying was that we're a public agency, we need to go through the proper process. We shouldn't just be looking at one option. We should put out an RFP and get someone to help us. So that was the way I understood that. And that is what we voted to do, and that was supposed to happen, and that hasn't happened. So,
Glenn, does that help you with your direction and clarity? Does that help you with your direction?
Well, I had one question, and that is, when you said to include the capital projects, the way that I would envision the project working.
I didn't say that.
Oh, yeah, I want to be clear that may not, the way, let me explain how you will get that. Because you will ultimately, your budget will be in balance, your reserves will be in balance.
Right.
You'll ultimately get that, but what will happen is, for example, today, even during the CIP discussion, you may, as a commission, direct us to take certain things out or put certain things in.
Right.
You may also do that in the first look budget. The next budget you see, I'm going to take very careful notes, And that next version will show that scenario that you've suggested. You'll have the draft preliminary budget to look at that. You'll also have the final budget to look at that.
Final
We'll
budget.
keep
In June.
revising that
Oh,
based on
okay,
your
sorry.
direction as we go forward over the next 4 months. And that the idea being that you will have the capital projects you want in sync with the reserves and everything else. So these next two items are going to be illustrative of what you, my suggestion is for sure take out anything in capital improvements that you don't want done. For sure suggest things you do want done. And you'll get that picture to create 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 budgets when I'm sure that I will miss the one that is one of the infinite varieties that each of you would like to see is going to be a task that will be difficult.
I think if you're going to look, if you're talking about presenting us with refinance options that include additional funding to fund a CIP project, probably since we're just doing this as an exercise to see what that would look like, wouldn't you just pick one of the biggest CIP projects and go with that as just an example scenario? I mean, it seems like that's would make the most sense. Just pick one, and then we can get a sense of what that, like, for example, Mateo Pier, or something we know that's going to be very expensive to fix. And now we know we've got, you know, the rotten situation with Johnson Pier and the potential deck collapsing under the freezers. I mean, we've got some big ticket items that are, you know, like the safety issue with the docks at Pillar Point Harbor. You know, you can pick any number of those safety type issues and take a look at what it would cost to fund fixing those things. I think that's really what I'm getting at. But I just want to point back to the reserve policy. That's really important. We need to see that. And the charts and graphs should go back to 2005 like they have in the previous presentations we've received at the board.
All I want, Glenn, is just to see a second look budget with the refinancing option.
Okay. All right. We'll work on cleaning up the presentation and the options.
Thank you.
Righty. Okay, moving on to item 9. Preliminary review of capital improvement plan, receipt of public input, and commission direction to staff for the 2016-2017 fiscal year budget. So staff report, please.
Yeah, and thank you, President Mateusz. We did talk about this at the last budget meeting. I did take careful notes. My spreadsheet, again, I apologize for the lack of technical ability to project the spreadsheet, but it now includes, for example, checking the Department of Public Works on the LED lights related to color. Checking on saltwater intrusion at the lift stations. Making sure that any dredging plan includes nourishing the Princeton shoreline. I'd also like to suggest that while I put under dredging $100,000 in planning for an overarching maintenance permit, and then in the next 3 years, $400,000, $850,000, and $500,000 for dredging, it might be that given the discussions that took place at the Beach Replenishment Committee meeting, that we expand that, increase that 100,000 to 200 or more, in order to make sure that our plan for dredging is as comprehensive as it can possibly be and will serve the needs of the beach replenishment project as well.
I'm sorry, are you saying that are you telling us about a section you've added that's new?
I'm reflecting notes and information on the dredging of the Pillar Point Harbor.
Steve, I'm having a really hard time between documents here because nothing's redlined.
Well, on your CIP, there's a number of things that have that do have red lines on them. There's what I'm suggesting on dredging on Pillar Point Harbor, based on a conversation today, is
With
that
me.
we increase the 100,000 for 16-17 to 200.
Can I give some context around that, Steve, if you don't mind, since I don't
I'm sorry,
want-
Commissioner Corrali? Didn't hear you.
I can give some context
Oh.
surrounding that, if we're around, put some
Yeah,
context.
that was feedback I received from Commissioner Corrali, Jen Corrali, after the Beach Replenishment Committee meeting, where it was suggested that that project alone might require $150,000 in plans and permitting. I had put in $100,000 to come up with an overarching plan. I do think that there's going to be an economy in incorporating everything in, because negotiation and discussions with, for example, the Army Corps will not necessarily change significantly based on a project getting a bit bigger. But nevertheless, based on that input, I would recommend changing that one to $200,000.
And through the chair, I have a comment on that. I think it's really important that everybody understand that we have areas of the harbor where boats bottom out.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily right next to the jetty. So we need to move material wherever it makes sense. If we need to move material closer to the Princeton shoreline,
Yes.
it makes sense to move it over there. Right now, there's nothing prohibiting us from moving material to the Princeton shoreline as long as it tests clean. We don't have to go through any rigmarole with Gulf of the Farallones or Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary, so there's no reason that we need to delay. As long as the material tests clean, we can move it to the Princeton shoreline, which seriously needs some beach replenishment. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated with the Surfers Beach area, which of course also needs replenishment, but that's also an area where the chances of the material staying on the beach are a lot less likely. And we don't own that property. So that land is owned by Half Moon Bay, and I would hope that there'd be a joint project happening and cost sharing happening with the city and the county and Caltrans, because it shouldn't be the harbor district footing the bill to replenish the beach. It should be a joint project with the other agencies where everybody's working together. And I think that's always been the vision, so I would hope that that would continue. And that if there were discussions about financing a demonstration project or a permanent solution, which is what I'm in favor of, that we would be doing that with the county and with the city, and with staff to staff talking together, trying to come up with a solution together and working with Caltrans to do it. So it doesn't seem that any of those meetings have happened yet, which concerns me. And if we're just going to add money to dredging, I think we need to get real specific about how that's going to benefit our boating users, and if their boats are bottoming out where, and some of the material that we need to move is most likely not going to test clean enough to put it on a beach. And so we're going to have to come up with another alternative to get it moved out of where it is now. And we should be prioritizing the areas that impact the boaters. So I just want to stress that. While I totally support sand replenishment at Surfers Beach, I also know it's complicated. And I would hope that we'd be looking towards a long-term solution. I think a demonstration project is a good first start, but it doesn't fix the problem. And I think we all know what the fix is. It's to move the material, test the material, move the material through the jetty, and get it recirculating back into the system. And the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary people have said that as long as the material is moved above the mean high tide line, there's no reason why we can't come up with a plan that they would approve and do that ASAP. We don't need to do a demonstration project to start moving the material. We shouldn't let a demonstration project slow us down. We should get the material moved above the mean high tide line as soon as we possibly can, and in an affordable way where we're sharing the costs with the other agencies that are going to benefit from it. So I would hope we'd be moving forward with plans on that permanent solution and not just spin our wheels on a short-term sort of demonstration project, which I fully support. Any movement in that direction is good, but I just don't want us to stop there. This has taken way, way, way too long. Meanwhile, we have no beach left. I mean, the erosion is terrible. It's horrible right there. And the longer we delay, you know, we've got the material trapped. We know how to move it, you know. It's called a dredge pipe. Let's just pipe it through the jetty, get it over to recirculate and replenish that beach, move it above the mean high tide line, and the Monterey Bay Marine Sanctuary said that was okay to do. So I don't see what we're kibitzing about with all of these, you know, demonstrations. I think we just need to do it.
Commissioner Chang Crawley.
So thank you. After the beach replenishment committee, which I thought was very good, I thought we have an $800,000 grant that we've applied for, and I agree that we should try to move on this as quickly as possible, at least for that particular project, which is the reason I suggested that we add another $100,000 to the 16-17 budget, so that at least we can use some of those funds to pay for the planning phase to just get that started, because it's gonna, we have to work. I think the $800,000 grant, probably we won't even get a response for about another year or so. Is that right, Steve? 1 to 2 years? 1 to 2 years? But at least
The grant is specific to actual operational construction of the project, as
right.
opposed to the planning and permitting
Right.
necessary.
That's yes, they're two separate items. And so but the reason I was talking to the general manager about adding another $100,000 is so that we can at least get that started, so that we have something to show for it. While I understand that there are other jurisdictions that could be involved, at the end of the day, I do think this is a public space. This would be something that I think our tax dollars could go to support, just like possibly even the West Trail, or the, which I think would be the Trail to Mavericks. You know, something along those lines. Those costs are already reflected in the unassigned reserves, because those are property tax funds that we get from property taxpayers all over the county, including residents of Half Moon Bay and the rest of San Mateo County. So I would like to see the additional $100,000 go to the 16-17 budget for dredging, and that would increase that from $100,000 to $200,000. And I know that, Steve, you touched on the Trail to Mavericks. I think that you wanted, that we talked about increasing that to $150,000, so increasing that by $100,000. And you know, we've got the funds to do this in the $5.8 million. The only thing that I would caution us on is, I agree with what Sabrina was saying, that we do want to have some reserve policies, but since it looks like these two things were kind of high on our priority list, and we have the funds to do that, and those are, in my opinion, public spaces, that we should increase the 16-17 budget for those two items.
I have a comment through the chair. I know that Commissioner Corrali's new, and so the history of discussions with the Army Corps of Engineers is not something that you've been here for in the past. We have had numerous meetings with the Harbor District, and then also the public has had meetings directly with the Army Corps of Engineers regarding the jetty, which is causing problems with the sediment buildup in the harbor and the lack of good circulation, which has led to a significant water quality problem. That's why we have a water pollution problem in the harbor. The issue is complicated, and I would urge you to maybe look back through some of those videos of the various workshops that we've had with the Army Corps of Engineers. I think that, you know, the Harbor District should not be on the hook for covering the cost of a problem that was caused by poor engineering by the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, I'm sure at the time they thought they were doing a good job, but now science has shown that the jetty configured the way that it is causing a significant erosion problem. And the Army Corps of Engineers has already stated multiple times at public meetings, their chief engineering guy, that they are the reason for the problem with the erosion. They've taken full responsibility for being the agency that is responsible for the erosion problem. The Harbor District didn't cause the erosion problem. It's the Army Corps of Engineers who built the jetty that caused the erosion problem. So it is really important that the Army Corps of Engineers is helping to solve the problem, since they're the ones that created it. So it's not something that the district should be on the hook for. It's a really big and very expensive problem. And there's no way this district can afford to solve that problem, especially not right now. So we need help. That's why we got this grant thing that we're working on for the demonstration project. But we're going to need financial help to solve that problem, and it should be the Army Corps trying to solve it. And we should be coordinating with them, which is what we've been doing. So I think it's really important to understand the sort of genesis of the erosion problem and who is really ultimately responsible. It was John Dingler, who's, I think that's how he says his name, who stood up in front of everybody at a meeting held at the Oceana Hotel and told everyone, including people from the sanctuaries and the Coastal Commission and the Coastal Conservancy, literally everybody was in the room, including the public, and he told us all that it was the Army Corps of Engineers who was responsible for the problem. So they're not denying it. There's no denial on their part. They've fully admitted to the fact that it's the jetty that's causing the erosion. Now the question is what to do about it and who's going to pay for it. So I just think we need to be really careful about how that gets handled, because we're a very small district in the scheme of things, and funding, you know, there's funding needed for lots of stuff, and if we start taking full responsibility for poor engineering on the part of the Army Corps of Engineers, that would certainly run us right out of business. So I want to be cautious about that. While I do appreciate your support for doing something, which I share that feeling, I think we need to be very careful about how we do it, and we need to bring in the right partners to help with the process. And so I would hope that that would move forward. I have requested all of the Army Corps of Engineers documents to date so that we can finally look at the draft reports that they've created. They've never shared any of that with the public yet. We have been waiting for over 6 years to get those reports. There's a lot of frustration in the community, which I'm sure you've heard. And without those reports, we're just not in a position to really do anything right now. So we need to get that data.
Okay, thank you. It's time to get back on our topic, and that's to direct staff to include the 16-17 capital projects. We've had a couple of revisions. We have one changing 100,000, 200,000. What was the other one?
For the trail.
The other one was increasing the dollars devoted to the West Trail and the trail out to Mavericks
So, yes, so that
by
would be,
another $100,000.
100.
200,000 to PBH dredging.
200,000 to PBH dredging and 150,000 to trail to Mavericks.
for a total of a $250,000 change in the 16-17 budget.
$200,000 change.
This is really way too vague. Can we get more specific about what we're going to be doing with the dredging and with the West Trail? Because mistakes have been made, and I want to know what exactly we're going to be doing.
Okay, well, in the dredging, the goal there would be to develop an overarching maintenance permit rather than doing the spot dredging that we do periodically, but to develop a dredge permit that covers the entire Little Point Harbor, that identifies the dredge sites, identifies the dredge disposal sites, and ideally is in the form of a 5-year permit both from the Army Corps and the Coastal Commission. Then rather than waiting for new permits every time we wanted to do a dredge activity, we could simply allocate the funds and bring in a dredge company to dredge up to the amount of money or the depth that we identified.
I have a question about that. At Monterey, they do that all themselves in-house.
Understood.
And it does not cost them $100,000, it doesn't cost them $50,000. It doesn't even probably cost them $20,000 to do that. So
Well,
how much is this gonna cost?
That would be a little vague.
I've got a lot of familiarity with renewing 5-year dredge permits with the Coastal Commission and the Army Corps. And the one fixed cost that I can think of in that is the approval of a sediment sampling and analysis plan. So one has to develop a sediment sampling and analysis plan and then get that approved, and then one has to perform the sediment sampling and analysis. So I would budget $35,000 every 5 years for that and that alone. Secondly, we would generally budget about $50,000 for renewing those permits, but it was simply renewing the permits. It wasn't developing the permits from scratch. So we already had the bathymetry, we already had the dredge disposal sites identified, we had the dredging sites identified. So that would be work that would need to be done. So I would see this being, for the first 5-year permit, a more expensive project. In 5 years, when we go back to renew that 5-year permit, if we're successful in getting it, I would see it costing considerably less.
Mr. President, are you looking for a motion for this?
I was looking to proceed on the item 9.
Could we
With
take
a motion?
look at,
Would you like to have a motion on this?
we haven't even talked about this yet. What do we're just in the beginning of talking about this.
I'd like to
We've
make
got
a
whole
motion
lot of
that we
different
direct
items here.
staff to include with the additional proposed items in this evening's discussion, to include in the proposed 2016, 2017 capital projects.
As amended.
As amended.
Second.
So I would like to finish. So what I'm hearing is that you have some rough idea what it's going to cost to do this for the dredging. And my question is, have you gotten, or will you get a copy of the work that Monterey has done and how much it costs them to do it? Because they're doing it all in-house, including they send out themselves to get their sand analyzed. They're checking the depth themselves. They've got their own dredge equipment. They're doing really innovative work, and they're doing it at a very low budget. And they're doing that because it's a city-owned marina, and they're on a shoestring, and they've come up with some really creative ways of getting this work done in-house. So if there's a way we could learn from what they're doing, I would just really encourage our staff to take a close look at how they're doing it so that we don't make mistakes, and since this is our first time. Okay, and then West Trail, what exactly is going to be done there with this additional funding?
I realize in looking at the West Trail that the amount of money I put in to develop the plans and engineering and permitting for addressing the issues of the West Trail as a whole was not sufficient, and we do need to, as part of our emergency coastal development permit, go back to the Coastal Commission by July 28th with a new plan. So we will, and that plan will need to address the status of the emergency work that we did. They directed us to include hydrology as a part of that. So for example, how does the drainage in the immediate area work? This would all be part of a proposal that would come to you for that design and engineering work that would describe in detail the scope, and that would be an item approved by this commission before that work would be done.
Would that include plans for the restroom that's so desperately needed and the parking lot?
No. This would be just the trail. However, it might include some, if you would, landscape architecture that might address future things. I would doubt that it would be able to include actual building design for the restroom, for example. I have had preliminary conversations with County Parks about that and would like to incorporate that into a project, certainly.
So one
I
of
have a
the,
motion and a second. I'm going to take one final comment from Commissioner Chang Corrali, then we're going to call for a roll call.
Thank you. So I just want to make it very clear that I did speak to the general manager. This is in regards to Pillar Point that we're talking about in terms of the changes I've suggested. And I did go over the Oyster Point portion of the spreadsheet, and it sounds like the budgeted amounts are adequate for the current years that have been outlined. So I just want to make that clear that I did speak to him about both
and
sites.
I would like to make clear that I can't vote for this because I still have questions, and I'm being cut off before I can get my questions answered, and that's really unfortunate because I would like to vote for this. I support all of these projects, and I'd very much like to vote for this, but I have questions that I think are really important, and I'm disappointed that my fellow commissioners aren't more interested in a public process and participation.
Well, I think we are, but I have full faith and confidence in the staff to do their jobs, to make sure this job is done in the best way possible so that it's safe for the public and is in line with our mission.
We have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Bernardo?
Aye.
Commissioner Brennan?
No.
Commissioner Corrales?
Aye.
Commissioner Carabano?
Aye.
President Mateusz?
Aye. Moving on to item 10, first look at San Mateo County Harbor District Budget 2016-17 fiscal year.
I'm going to introduce this very quickly then, President Mateusz, and then turn it over to Glenn, who's taken who's done all the work on this and had to put considerable work into reconstructing a lot of the base data. And let me just assure you that by the time we get to a preliminary budget, our initial goals, as we described, to split out public and enterprise funds still stand. We just haven't gotten there yet. And we hear you loud and clear on using the tools at our disposal to communicate this budget, which is at its core a communication tool, or a financial tool, to you and the public about how you are prioritizing the allocation of funds for the coming fiscal year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Glenn. This is why, and with that, I'd also say this is why we called this very consciously and deliberately a first look rather than a preliminary budget. It's a first look at some numbers.
So, yeah, and to reiterate too, I hope that, especially if you're hearing these comments directed to the graphs, and also I think not having the visuals that, we had hoped to have, I guess we were counting on the system that's not working today. I hope to bring you a second look at the first look.
So it'd be the second look budget.
And if we don't have a lot of changes and analysis that require a whole lot of time, I think we can probably provide that at the next meeting. So a little more on that later. But because I think it is important to be able to see and feel what we're doing. What is in the first look only is the consolidated budget. Yes, we will split it up by departments. As you've noticed in bills and claims, we will have one less department. We're not separating administration and harbor commissioners anymore. We also, by the time you have the final budget, in fact, by the time you have the final budget, we will have public and enterprise split for the departments. Actually, we're working very hard. Say, Vaughn is working very hard with the finance staff to make sure that even your third quarter review this year will contain that long-awaited public enterprise allocation. There are, as there always seems to be whenever I touch a keyboard, some typos and a couple of things that I missed when I moved the CIP information over to this budget. So when you get your second look at the first look, I think I'll have to think of another name for it.
The second look.
The second look. I like that.
Or first look, part two.
First look point one.
Part two, as Randy suggested. No, when we get that second look at the first look, or our second look, I'll make those corrections as well. And in the narrative, I'll do my best to redline any changes from what you read at this meeting, so that what you read at this meeting is not lost. Also, because new information always comes in, I'll make those changes in the budget tables and also note them redlined in the staff report that you next see. What you're looking at here is an opportunity, though, to look at the big picture. This is all of our departments, all of our budgets. The district remains sound, and the estimates that are used, just to kind of talk about what we do at this stage of the budget, we try to estimate our revenues low, and we try to estimate our expenses towards the high side when we only have information from half the year, and we're projecting ahead for 6 months. And the reason we do that is so that as the budget continues, staff is hopefully able to give you better and better news during the process. But also, it's always disappointing to find out you don't have resources you thought you had. So we'll continue to watch that. There are a number of the spotty data that we have, having just the 2 quarterly reports and one that I had a lot of confidence in tracking our expenditures in the short history, does put an extra burden on you and on staff to do projections. But I think we've got a good start, and as we go through this budget process, I think you'll see that the numbers will get refined. What staff needs from you at all times that we bring in this budget is, if something's missing, please advise, that you want to have done, advise us, put it in. If there's something in here that is something that the commission does not want to see happen, we pull it out. It makes the budget process more visible and clear in the future as we march down. Just a minute on the personnel cost assumptions. And you should have in your packet, and I think you do because I have it in mind, a budget of position control. And what that represents is the personnel budget. If these positions, as they are presented in the budget control, this is what is the basis of the personnel budget.
Okay.
In the real world, there may be temporary staff that is filling in for hires that haven't happened yet. People leave before their steps. But the best thing to do is to budget on what you most likely expect to have happen in the coming years. So but we assume staff is staying. We budgeted them for their step increases. We make assumptions based on the latest information that we might have as to what salaries and benefits might be. So you'll see these numbers change slightly over time, but probably not a great deal unless there's some major changes to staff. Other than that, just to point out that what I did was in the full budget, I did assume both the payoff of the DBW loan and some other changes to committed and assigned reserve. Those are my suggestions as to what I would do. I gave some narrative as to why certain reserves disappeared, and actually didn't disappear, but the funds were then put into unassigned or another reserve or capital projects. That's by no means, if those changes, which you don't want to see those changes, just direct staff. We won't put those in yet. We'll have many discussions about reserves, both the reserve policy putting it in place, and I think as it gets implemented with my successor, I think you'll have plenty of time to develop the reserve policy that works and addresses the reserve needs of the district. What I think I would like to do when I present second look, if it pleases the commissions, I don't want to put too many columns in here because then the print gets small, but to have another column that has another DBW scenario, perhaps the one Commissioner Corrales suggested, that's the one you want to see. there's infinite scenarios, but whatever will give you the best, because whatever will give you the best view of two very different scenarios, and you can probably fill in how it would look with something in the middle.
Yeah, just.
So if you direct me like that specifically, I think we should be able to do that without too much. I know Yvonne's very anxious to get going on some charts and graphs for your next meeting. Other than that, I'm ready to answer any questions.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Thank you, and just to echo what you just said right now, regarding the graphs, yes, I would really appreciate some sort of visual graphs, because again, I see that better than reading paragraphs like this, and also just numbers, lists of numbers. I get lost in the numbers. So really, what I'm looking for is sort of like pie charts that show comparisons visually. Things that show like previous year compared to this year, like so I can compare something rather than having to look up numbers through these just lists of numbers. So things that make it easier for me to understand some of this and make sense of it, again, in a very visual way. Thank you, that's all I want to say. But this looks good. Thank you.
Commissioner Chang Crawley.
Glenn, thank you. We're making good progress and taking steps in the right direction. So I really appreciate all of this. But just a quick question. You had mentioned that if we wanted to add or take out anything, that we should come to you. But I just wanted to kind of get your expectation on, you might have a lot of changes. So I think that there might be a process, or we consider our priorities based on what we agreed upon as a board a couple meetings ago, instead of having everything thrown at you. What are your expectations of that?
My expectations is that, of course, the commission suggestions will be in perfect tune with the adopted goals and objectives of the district. But whatever they are, remember, you need to speak to Steve as a body who will direct me. So if you direct me to put in funds for a swimming pool on top of the mountain, I'll do that.
No, that's not a priority.
Speak to Steve as a body so he can direct me as to what to put in. And this is why we're having at least 3, and since I've just volunteered to have a second look on April 6th, and now 4 planned budget meetings. And remember, this budget, once the final budget isn't final, you all will be looking at it and revising it, especially as good as staff's estimates might be. Reality is often different when we start doing projects. So I think you'll be looking, with all that's going on, you'll probably be looking at this budget for some time.
But I don't think we have a defined date of April 6th. I think it was whenever we could get it back.
Well,
So.
I think that unless there's a lot of complicated changes now, I really think that we can. I'm looking at April 6th. We'll see how many changes you have to make. And in any case, they all have. We'll do everything we can to get them all incorporated when the preliminary budget comes before you on April 20th.
That was a nice lateral to Mr. McGraw.
Thank you. Thanks, Glenn.
I have some comments.
Commissioner Brennan.
So I have some specific questions about CIP projects that are in here. But first, I just wanted to ask, why did we switch from the horizontal format for the budget? That was so much easier to read. And this text is so tiny, even with my magnifying glasses on. I'm having a really hard time reading this. Could we go back to the horizontal?
You mean landscape?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, sure.
That way, I'm sure you've seen our old budget. When we went through this process, it was always presented as a horizontal document. And that way the text can be bigger and we can fit more columns in. And I'm wondering if the columns we're using, are they different from our past budgets? Or are they the same? Are we missing any columns?
This is again, a first look at the numbers. When we got into this, we had a very hard time figuring out the basis or background for any of the numbers in the 15-16 budget. So Glenn has done a lot of work on reconstructing this to make it easy for his successor to build on this in future years with linking documents. Generally speaking, a budget is going to look at the previous fiscal year, the current fiscal year budget, current fiscal year projected, and then the fiscal year that we're looking at. And this is what you've got here. Certainly, we could add a column for the 14-15 year, which would be the last year that we've got that has been completed. You know, 14-15, we're in 15-16, and we're looking at 16-17. So we could add 14-15 with actual.
Did we have that in our previous budget, that many columns? I thought we did.
You had varying numbers of columns depending upon the page.
Huh. Well, if we could add that extra background information.
Okay, so a 14-15 actual, and we can add that column, absolutely.
And I think if you go horizontal, you can fit it.
And I do want to say, remember, this is first look. I thought, I want, you know, at this point, because it was the only work that would be done by this point, what you have is a projection for the current year. You can add, you know, but we can add more columns. We'll get that information.
The other question.
The other thing I want to say about just one thing about the, you know, so remember, this is not in lieu of the final, that final bound document that you're used to in June, but also the general manager has directed me, and we've had discussions about the actual, how this will fit into the actual budget book, which will not look anything like the tables and numbers that I'm showing you here. It's going to be, I think, a much more readable and accessible document than the prior budget. I should tell you that staff has had difficulty finding things and verifying things with the layout of that budget. I think we're going to improve on it.
Well, I think it's great that you're consolidating admin and commission, so that makes a lot of sense. That's going to make it easier to read right there. But one thing that was nice about the old budget is that it split out OPM and PPH.
Absolutely. And in fact, if I may, it may be that by the time we're done with this process, you're going to be crying uncle because we're giving you so much. What the vision that I've had up on the whiteboard in my office, pretty much since I got here, is that this is the top level document. This is the consolidated, this is money in, money out. Below this, there will be a public and enterprise split. So then there'll be two budgets, which will sum together to make this consolidated budget. And then below public and enterprise, there will be more budgets. So it'll be pillar point, oyster point, and admin. So depending upon the level of detail that you or the member of the public wishes to determine, you can look into Pillar Point Harbor. This is the goal. You will be able to look at Pillar Point Harbor and see the budget for Pillar Point Harbor broken out public and enterprise. Or if you're more of the big picture thinker, you could look at the consolidated budget and just see money in, money out to the Harbor District. All of that detail will be eventually available to you.
So that will fit well with the OpenGov platform when you upload.
Yes, and we've been talking, I think Glenn has been communicating, or Yvonne has been communicating with OpenGov to make sure that all of this.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
And now the general manager described why it's going to take me so long to answer my emails. It was never our intention not to include departmental budgets. The reason you have this here is because in building the budget from scratch, worksheet by worksheet, this is as far as I got. We will take that step. We also, it will probably be a separate discussion, but we also need to raise the issue of looking at our rates and fees, which were not increased last year, and look at that as part of the budget process. So all of this is going to telescope together beautifully by the
end of June.
Was that June 15th? I think is the second meeting in June.
Okay, so I have some CIP projects, and honestly, I can hardly read this thing, so I'm just going to ask if they're included. Completing the Wi-Fi, has that been budgeted?
We are hoping that that wouldn't rise to the level of a major project. My understanding is that Pillar Point is a little difficult, but the Oyster Point, according to our assistant harbor master over there, is fairly functional. But we'll be looking at that.
Okay. And then creating a master plan document, not to be confused with the strategic plan, is that something that we've looked at budgeting?
I have not looked at that in this budget. We've got a strategic or master plan conversation coming up in a moment.
Okay. And then in docks, I know you have some money set aside for the dock, the wonky dock issue at Pillar Point. Does that include like Dock G and the stuff we talked about at the last CIP discussion, not the one tonight, but the one previously?
We have permits in place actually for the replacement of 12 dock fingers, and that's in the CIP. And then there is a piling replacement at the fish sales dock, that's in the CIP. And there is money to look at the end of the pier. And I think there's some money for rebuilding Dock H, but I think we were, in the CIP, we were pushing that out, or looking at planning for that this year, planning and permitting for that this year, and possibly completing that in a subsequent year.
So I just want to stress that I think getting the docks replaced is so important because of the danger to our visitors. And I believe it's a safety hazard. And I really think we need to prioritize safety concerns.
I would agree. In between pier deck, Commissioner Brennan, dock fingers and replacing H dock, in between construction and planning, we've got $925,000 budgeted for the 16-17 year.
So G dock is really bad. I just want to keep mentioning that because
Okay.
we keep talking about H, but G is the worst dock.
The biggest issue with H, though, is that as the fishing boats are getting bigger, we're losing functional space because we've got a distance in between two fingers that used to accommodate two boats that only accommodates one now. And so we're trying to capitalize on that and accommodate the needs there in a better way.
You mean fit more boats in?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's important,
Right.
but also
Yeah.
public safety on
Safety is
G
always
dock.
going to be number one. And if there are,
Safety,
I will,
dock.
we will look at G dock.
So
Okay.
Or we Randy?
can I ask a question about H-Doc really quickly? Is that, and I'm looking at that on the other spreadsheet that had the CIP breakout in terms of budget and years, and it says commercial docks. So is that considered an enterprise item?
That would be an enterprise function, yes.
Okay. So hopefully we'll be able to see how that looks divided up between enterprise and non-enterprise, right? I'm just trying to clarify for my own
If we do a good
edification.
job, that would show up on the enterprise
Okay.
side of the house.
And so would the dock fingers be that, or is that be the
Dock fingers would be enterprise.
enterprise? Okay, great. I'm just, thank you, I just didn't know that. Thank you. Sorry,
I
Sabrina.
can't think of a dock that would not be enterprise.
What was that?
I think any dock would be enterprise.
Okay, thank you.
And I do appreciate that the ADA survey got included in here, so I'm noticing that. I still have concerns that we should not, as a district, be paying for projects that address problems with landfill subsidence and sea level rise at Oyster Point Marina. I think that's outside of the scope of the JPA. So I'm concerned about that interpretation of the JPA, and I'd really like to get more feedback on that later. But we talked about that at length at the last meeting, so I'm not going to belabor it. The accounting software, didn't we hear that we did, last meeting, you said we didn't need to buy that, or what? was
Right,
that?
and so it hopefully is not in the capital.
Yeah, that's not in
Budget.
here.
And then archiving documents, have we got cost for that?
We've actually started on that project.
Oh.
We're looking at a pilot project of a smaller number of boxes just to see how the system works, how the documents are labeled, whether the scanning is accurate, and how retrieval is. So we've selected a dozen boxes and we're doing a pilot.
So when Melanie, for example, I just want to do this to illustrate how the process works. Within staff, when Melanie gives me an estimate for the scanning project, I go to Steve and say yay or nay. I put it in the proper column, which would probably be not a capital expense, but an operating expense. And I'll highlight that red line in your report. You might notice, for example, the ADA survey might disappear from capital, but hopefully I'll have noted that we've decided that it isn't properly a capital project, so it's now in as a professional service.
Right.
So hopefully that's how this will work, and that's
But
where
what
it's important to get the direction from you to.
But in this list, what we've done is basically highlight those outliers in any of those other more generic headings of professional services. We want to outline and highlight that outlier.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so on item 10, do we have any further direction to the staff where they will proceed along their current path towards completion? So we don't need any action on this, but
No.
everyone's clear?
Yep.
All right. Moving right on to item 11, strategic plan. So provide direction to the staff and strategic planning committee. So staff report.
Thank you, President Matoush. As background, this commission in the past determined the need for a strategic plan to guide the future development of the district and the two facilities it manages. The commission selected Lisa Consulting to develop the plan. To date, the district has received several draft documents establishing baseline conditions. Existing infrastructure, facilities assessment, financial conditions assessment. Let me say that again because it sounded different. Existing infrastructure and facilities assessment, a financial conditions assessment, and a sustainable fisheries business plan for Pillow Point Harbor. All of these documents, by the way, are between 80 and 85% complete according to the final invoice received from Lisa Wise, and the draft documents are available on the district's website and additionally were provided to this commission in January of 2015. The contract was suspended prior to the completion of all tasks, so the actual strategic business plan, as identified, has not been completed, and the baseline conditions have not been completed either, like I said, between 80 and 85%. I have reviewed those draft documents, however, with the exception of a close look at the Sustainable Fisheries Business Plan, or the Sustainable Community Fisheries Business Plan, and do believe that those delivered draft documents provide, or will provide on completion and updating, a solid foundation for going forward with the next step of the process. Because in order really to map out where one is going, one needs to know where one is to begin with. And I think that those documents have really done some very good work in looking at where we are now. Earlier this year, the President Matoush appointed himself and Commissioner Ciancarelli to the Ad Hoc Strategic Planning Committee that will help and advise the Commission going forward on the goals of the next part of the process. And I've got to say, as a side note, you know, we're looking at a 5-year CIP. We're looking at a 2016-17 budget. We're doing a lot of things going forward without having this strategic or master plan in place. And yet these other items won't wait. And so we have to move forward by this time next year. I would like to think that the district will have an idea of our roadmap forward, and our CIP will tie better into that. Our discussion at the beginning of next year on goals and objectives for 2017 will tie better into that. So during 2014, the consultant held several public workshops and outlined in that process the takeaway or the goals of the strategic business plan. And I've outlined that. I don't need to read that out for you in the staff report. But that the strategic business plan will incorporate findings from the existing infrastructure and facilities assessment, the financial conditions assessment, the sustainable fisheries business plan, and the capital facilities plan. and then it would make implementation and funding recommendations. So the next steps are, of course, dependent on the desired outcome and the time perspective of the end result. And by that I mean, is this to be a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, or a 10-year plan, or even longer, in order to provide the building block for the future. And I'm going to jump straight to the 10-year plan. I think if we were directed, for example, to provide significant narrative around the 5-year CIP that we are looking at, then we would, in effect, and to a large extent, have a 5-year strategic business plan. Here's what we're going to be doing, here's how we're going to be allocating our resources, and in detail it would get into here's how we're funding those resources, whether we think this is a grant-funded project, whether this is a reserve-funded project, or whether this is a net operating revenue-funded project. And that 5-year CIP really does provide the Commission, the staff, and the public with a really fairly clear idea of how the Commission is establishing priorities for the district. 10 years out, we start getting a little sort of fuzzier about the details of what we're looking at doing. But we're starting to see the vision for how this Commission may want to see the district and the facilities it operates for the benefit of the public looking. Is the Harbor Master's office in the best place, for example? I mean, we can look today in our 16-17 budget or in our 5-year CIP about improving ADA access, but is it in the best place? Can that portion of Pillow Point Harbor be repurposed? How do we see the district moving forward in relationship with our ongoing discussions or discussions soon to be commenced with the City of South San Francisco and Oyster Point? How do we see capitalizing on our in-house skills and areas of expertise? I mentioned in this staff report, for example, that would it be something the Commission would consider to consider discussing with the County of San Mateo the operation at Coyote Point? I by no means mean to suggest that those discussions have taken place. I mentioned that or have begun. I by no means mean to suggest that that has been prior direction of this Commission. I meant that solely as an example of a way of the sort of issue that might be discussed in the role of a long-term master plan. From a facilities perspective, a master plan may look at land uses, how those land uses are consistent with the county's local coastal program, and whether our vision is in sync with that local coastal program, or whether we would need, if implementing projects, to be consistently looking for general plan amendments. If that were the case, then we may consider, rather than a project-specific general plan amendments, taking that master plan and approaching the county about utilizing that as a major amendment to the local coastal program.
Steve, can you clarify, I think I understand what you mean, but a planning document that would incorporate issues like the LCP into it and create a roadmap for actually seeking permit approval and moving forward with projects. That's not what these documents are. That would be a master plan, which is different than what, this is like something totally different. Can you explain different types of plans so that we have
Absolutely, and one might look at a strategic business plan as a building block towards developing a master plan. The master plan, like I said, is if one were to look at this from an elevation perspective, as your staff make decisions next week, we're on the ground and in the weeds. As this Commission looks at the 16-17 budget and the major maintenance and capital projects, now we're looking forward, so we've got a little elevation, we're at 1,000 feet. Strategic business plan maybe at 10,000 feet, and looking down and identifying opportunities. How can we capitalize on our existing resources? So on and so forth. A master plan may take us up to 30,000 feet to really get a big picture of how we fit in the larger whole and how our the commission's vision for the district fits within that larger whole. It may be, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry, please finish. Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were wanting to ask a question.
No, after you're finished, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay. If we are looking at capitalizing on opportunities and extending a pier or some such, then that may be considered part of a strategic business plan, but not sort of a fundamental change. If we've got a vision that's different for how that facility is overall put together, whether it be Pillar Point or Oyster Point, then we've got to look at a master plan. It doesn't pay to keep wanting to do projects, and I'm not saying this has been what's been happening, but if you've got a project, and then you look at the county's local coastal program, and you say, well, all right, we need an amendment to the LCP because the LCP doesn't allow this in this location. And then you go through that process, and then you, another project, and now you want to go back and amend it again.
Piecemeal.
Piecemeal, exactly, thank you. The master plan might look at where we're going as a whole, look at a major amendment to the local coastal plan that incorporates all those elements at what's called at a program level rather than at a project level. So then the LCP is modified perhaps that then as one moves forward with specific projects, certainly one still needs planning approval, but the approval becomes, is this project consistent with the LCP as adopted? Well, yes, it is. So we're simply implementing the master plan, and it becomes a guiding document that can take us forward 10 years, and it becomes a touchstone. And so as we develop our goals and objectives, our CIPs, we can look back to the master plan and keep saying, are we checking stuff off? Are we consistent? Are we heading in the same direction? Master plans need revisiting. A master plan 10 years ago might not have been looking at sea level rise as a significant component. We've seen that also, incidentally, in CEQA documents. It used to be that you didn't have to look at greenhouse gases as part of an environmental plan. Now you do. But conditions change and plans need adapting to those different conditions. So I think that the question for this commission is fundamentally, how far forward do you want to look? And I think that the strategic business plan path, as it quoted in the document, it builds on past work, recent planning efforts, and potential economic and capital facility opportunities, a better understanding of the potential environmental impacts of district activities. It's it could be a great document. The baseline conditions that Lisa Weiss Consulting has looked at need updating, but we need to complete those in order to be able to move that, to be able to fully utilize those documents. And then that doesn't need to happen as a part of the master planning because we've already got that baseline. We've done a lot of that work. So I think that the commission discussed where you want to go with this, kick it back to the strategic planning committee, and then we can, this is not a project, this is not a decision that gets made tonight, it's not a project that gets fully described tonight, not even the next time. This is going to be a process, and might take a couple of years, in fact.
Commissioner Bernardo.
Thank you. Very briefly, I've had the pleasure of sitting at this very spot when I was a planning commissioner here in South San Francisco, and now I sit here as a harbor commissioner. And I've also worked on strategic plans in my day job at the Port of Oakland. We go through them every 5 years, actually. And the reason for that is because, as Steve said, is that you cannot predict financial conditions. I mean, 5 years from now, who knows if we're going to go into a recession, or you just can't plan that far out sometimes. So we tend to go in 5-year cycles, and we're in the process of actually updating our strategic plan. And just for the public's sake, the layperson's sake, is someone who's watching this and doesn't understand what any of this is. Strategic plan is basically a framework The strategic plan is basically a framework that contains guiding principles for how you're going to be looking at projects and things in the future. Think of it as filters. So, for example, okay, if your guiding principles are environmental sustainability, fiscal responsibility, community participation, every project you do will take those three things into account. So a strategic plan is not specific projects. It's not, okay, we're going to do a pier here, we're going to build this here, this shack here, whatever. That's not a strategic plan. It is guiding principles so that you know how to make decisions going forward based on agreed upon points. So having said that, I really believe we have to have a strategic plan. It's our roadmap. And the sooner that we complete one, I would be so happy. So I'm all for this. I look forward to the committee, you know, kind of jump-starting it and getting it moving again. But I'm really excited that this item came up because we need it.
I agree with you.
Having taken the CSDA course on strategic planning, what was imparted to me is the strategic plan is top level and it involves the commission and the public. We should be able to do a 5-year plan according to the course I took for under $50,000, for instance. A strategic business plan is slightly different in that that's staff-driven, technical in nature, and that's going to be more of your CIP type thing because we know which way we're going, we've got planned expenses, and you folks are the people that have to execute that. So I don't know if it's too early to say that we've got to start planning for an RFP to help us with a plan, whether it be the 5-year, the 10-year. We need to start developing that RFP. We're going to be having a meeting. We've got a preliminary agenda. We'll be fleshing out the agenda and getting back and reporting to the commission after the planning committee and the public meets to get some input there. But I cannot emphasize enough, please start your RFP process because you're not going to write one overnight. And we're going to have to start putting some meat and flesh on those bones to get that thing out to the public.
I have a couple comments. So what we got from Lisa Wise Consulting, 3 documents like this, these are not strategic plans.
No.
This is something totally different. And I wouldn't even call this a business plan, but it is what it is. It's a foundational document with some historic and whatever information about the district in it. It's not thorough in that I believe the history of the district is not well illustrated in these reports. And I think we need to beef up our history telling, and we need to make sure that our history is well archived. There are a lot of issues with these plans, but I'm really happy to hear that the board is making a clear distinction and understands a clear distinction between a master plan and what a strategic plan is. And a high-level strategic plan document is definitely something we could use, and it shouldn't take years to produce. We should be able to do it in a matter of months. And I think it should cost more like $20,000 at the most. We need to have some public meetings, get some input, and come up with a plan. And I know I've looked at the Port of Oakland's strategic plan in the past because Commissioner Bernardo, I think you provided it to us at one point. And it's exactly that kind of bullet point, high level, you know, document that we're missing and that would be useful and something that we could carry throughout everything we do. But I do think that, you know, if you look at our 1992 master plan, when I first started bringing up concerns about our lack of planning, I did a PowerPoint presentation, which I think 2 commissioners here probably will never forget because it took me a couple hours to get through it. But I went through every single item in the 1992 master plan and basically tore it to shreds because it was so outdated. And what I was hoping at the time was that we would produce a new master plan, but that didn't happen. So far, we haven't done the strategic plan and we haven't started a master plan, but we do have some other documents that are unfinished. And I'm hoping that the staff could finish these documents, because I think they're close, although I agree the data needs to be updated with new, especially like fishery data and more history information, which I've sort of been collecting, so I have some of that now. But I'm hoping we can just polish these things off and call it done and not spend a whole lot more money on this, because we haven't talked about cost here today, and how much have we spent on these documents? Do you know off the top of your head? 200,000?
No, 115.
115,000, okay. So I'm hoping the staff can finish these documents, and then we can move on to doing what's really important, which is get our master plan done, so we have some direction. And then the next, strategic plan, which should be simple. And then we move on to the master plan, so we can actually start implementing projects in a way that's not piecemeal. And I'm sure the Port of Oakland has a master plan in addition to the strategic plan, and that's a more complicated process, getting that finalized and through the public process. But I also would like to say that the documents that we've gotten today from Lisa Wise Consulting have never been reviewed by the board in any public meetings. They've also never been reviewed by the public in any public meetings. They haven't been made available at public venues like the library, or none of the normal processes that you would find if, say, the county was putting out a new draft LCP, or there was some important county planning document. That would be made available to the public through public meetings, workshops. It would be at the library with multiple copies. You know, it would be noticed in the newspaper that people would have a certain time period to review the documents and then give feedback before revisions were made, and then it would be re-reviewed. So all of those processes that the public is used to going through, because especially on the coast side, because we're confronted with so many of these processes with the county, none of that has ever happened. And so we're just like nowhere with this, except that we do have a significant pile of paper here that could be somewhat useful if we could just polish it up and move on with what's important, which is, like Commissioner Bernardo said, getting this strategic bullet point strategic plan done and then moving to the master plan. So those are my comments, and I did really appreciate the feedback on the LCP. Obviously, that's a key component that we need to consider. None of that has been considered in any of these Lisa Wise documents that I'm aware of. And sea level rise, tsunami inundation, all of those things that we have to plan for have not been addressed adequately. And that's stuff that I would imagine would get factored into a master plan, so that would be down the road. But clearly public safety would be a key thing that we would want to point to in a strategic plan as well. Thank you.
Randy.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to point out, too, another advantage of the master plan is it protects the district's interests. Not unlike a general plan for a city. Those things have to be considered when any of the other jurisdictions in the area want to do something. They have to look and see what our, the district's desires are. So, like you said, it builds on it, but that's another advantage to doing it. Not waiting too long to do it.
Thank you. Do you feel comfortable with the direction we're going to have a meeting? We'd like you to start looking towards your process.
I would like to address some of Commissioner Brennan's comments. Staff cannot complete these documents. There are sections that haven't been completed yet. That's why they're at 80%. And I think if the process had run its course, the consultant would have continued to work on the draft document, and then at 100% of the draft document, then there would have been a lot of discussion prior to adoption. It stays draft. And what we've got are PDFs of these documents. I do think that, like I said, there's a lot of good information in there. I talked with the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association, Lisa Damarosh, today, who feels that there's good information and a good solid start in the Community Sustainable Fisheries Plan that would eventually help them with quotas if, through the Magnuson-Stevens Act. I think there's a circulation of parking assessment. I haven't dug into that. I think that's seems to be a fairly good document. Staff doesn't have the bandwidth, the capabilities, the time to look into this, and I would actually recommend that the committee discuss seeking a revised proposal under a new contract with Lisa Weiss Consulting to complete these 3 draft documents only and to move forward from there. There's good work been done there, and I think until they complete it and present it to us so that we can take the words draft off it, until I think we need to get to that point, we can be doing that simultaneously with the development and issuance of an RFP for somebody to complete the look forward part. But that would be my recommendation.
So I'd like to respond back to that. First of all, we have paid way too much money for what we've gotten today. And the planner or consultant has not followed through on the work that they said they were going to do. We did not get many things that were included in the list of deliverables. They weren't produced. Meetings that were supposed to happen didn't happen. Website wasn't built. Social media never happened. The list goes on. So there was a real falling down on meeting deliverables. Plus, we overpaid for the work we've gotten to date. And in addition to that, as far as the sustainable fisheries piece went, what the board thought we were getting was a fishery plan for commercial and recreational, not just commercial. And it was never explained to anybody that I recall that all we were going to get was a plan for commercial. And then I hear that now if we want to add recreational in, well, that's going to be another $20,000 plus even more now because the thing's so outdated, it's from 2014. So I feel like we have gotten ripped off on this process, and I'm very concerned about that for a number of reasons. So I really don't feel confident about continuing with the process that we've been going on and throwing more and more money at these documents when what we actually need aren't even these documents. What we need is we need a strategic plan, which we just talked about, and we need a master plan. So why are we going to throw another, 50 to 100,000 plus? And with this consultant, the pricing just goes up and up and up. And have we even gotten new estimates on what it's going to cost for them to finish this? Because I can guarantee you it's not going to be what they originally quoted. They've already told the Half Moon Bay Seafood Marketing Association that their prices are going to be higher because of the delay and because they're going to have to update so much data. So this is like ballooning beyond any comprehension. I just can't fathom how we could continue to throw money at this and how you could recommend that. So I'm just concerned that we should move our funds towards what we really need, which is a real strategic plan, get that done, and then move on to the master plan. And take what we need out of these documents, whatever's usable, use it. If we're going to finish anything, it should be the fishing community sustainability plan, but that needs to include recreational fishing as well. And without the recreational component, we're not really coming up with the true fishing community sustainability plan. And I think we've been shortchanged on that. And I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding because this is what this consultant has done in the past. They did it for Morro Bay. Here's the Morro Bay report. They did it for Monterey. Here's the Monterey report. But guess what? Every one of these two other reports that the consultant did was paid for by grant funding. And we're paying for this report. This is coming out of the public's money, but it's only serving one user group. And we have a larger base than that, and we need to make sure that we're reflecting our various users. So I just think there was some misdirection on this effort, And it needs to be reined in, and we really ought to just move on to doing a strategic plan. So that's my suggestions.
So the committee will meet and come back to the commission with the results of that meeting, and in the meantime, you'll start building the framework for an RFP?
We'll do that.
I have to make one comment really quickly.
All right, Commissioner Chang.
So I agree with the direction that you would like us to go in, Steve, and I agree with Tom. We are where we are today. We're presented with this deck of cards that we've got, and so we need to move forward. I think that your recommendation and suggestions are good. And, quite frankly, to me, yeah, could it have been more cost effective? Maybe, but I wasn't on the board at the time, so I don't even know what the discussions were. But this plan, this process is actually going to benefit the Harbor District and all of the residents in the county, and quite frankly, we've wasted more money on other things that are totally frivolous and a waste of time. And I think that we need to move forward with the proposal that you have and that Commissioner Matoush suggested. So I'm with you on that, Tom.
Could you please give us new estimates for the cost to complete what you've recommended?
Yes, I will get that. Okay.
Okay, item 12, General Manager's Report. Mr. McGraw.
As a reminder, for discussion, moving forward, the activity reports will be always presented at the second meeting of the month and will reflect the activities of the various departments for the previous calendar month. As we're in that transition period right now, today with this one, you'll see some repetition. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about my activities over the month of February.
Commissioner comments?
Could you give us an update on the issues with the West Trail? I know that we had talked about collaborating or working more with the other agencies, and we did that big project. I don't know, what did we spend, $150,000 or something?
Including planning, yes, about that.
Okay. And it's not even really useful because the drain doesn't connect to...
And that's the hydrology part of the plan that we've got to submit to Coastal Commission by July 28th. It's addressing that specific thing, and the emergency permit, in fact, says that if it can be shown that that is useless and the culvert doesn't need to be there underneath the trail, then we'll take it out.
We're going to take it out?
No, we would have to take it out if the stuff above can be shown not to work. I still maintain that the stuff above doesn't work because it has been poorly maintained for many, many, many years.
How did this all come up? Why wasn't that looked at before we spent the $150,000 on all that work?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
Commissioner Chang Crawley.
So, Steve, thanks for the report. Just one quick comment, maybe just a little to-do item based on the Beach Replenishment Committee meeting that we had. I know that the city of Half Moon Bay was invited to the meeting, and they were not represented there for whatever reason. They may have been busy. If you wouldn't mind just communicating with the city manager, just to keep her in the loop as to what is happening, so that they know, and also so that they know that we want to be collaborative and just open communication, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, item 13, Interim Director of Administrative Services Report, Mr. Lazoff.
Like you, I'm getting used to the new format of reporting once a month with monthly reports. Since I already reported for half of February, this report is for the second half. Probably I think one thing that stands out is you'll notice that tasks have now shifted over to finance and HR, which are the duties of, both largely, which are the duties of the interim administrative services director. And so not surprisingly, we have a lot to do there, and it's hard to capture the everyday that we're doing, everything from reorganizing personnel files to making sure that confidential documents are secure, to seeing with fresh eyes what some of the processes in finance, and encouraging our staff who has really stepped up to bring things forward. In fact, things come forward at a faster rate that we can address all of them, but we pick the big items and we work on them. We're taking a fresh look at everything. Even I think the display in the audit, when it's finally completed before you sometime next month, I think we'll have some different elements that will present a clearer picture of the district's financial situation. So there's a lot to do. I'll throw out that I think that the morale of our staff is real good in finance, and I think we all appreciate that it's been noted by many commissioners what a good job everyone's doing. And especially because it feels sometimes like, for an old person like me, that I've got all these young recruits, and they've all really just stepped up so marvelously. So, and the same is true with HR, which is partially done by temporary staff and with my oversight, and is also supported by HR, advanced level HR support from RGS. So I think it's going very well. But no, we're not finished. We have quite a bit to do.
I do have a public comment on item 13. Greg Sanchez, please.
My name is Greg Sanchez. Some of you know me. I've been trying to open Oyster Point for the last 2 years, the bait and tackle store, and the last meeting I came to, they said the lease agreement had went out to Boat and Waterway. I spent 6 hours on the phone with Boat and Waterway. I've talked to numerous people. I finally found out where the lease, whose desk it was on. I contacted that person. She called me back, and she told me now that she sees that somebody's interested. I explained everything to her, that I've been trying to open this bait store back open, and the people want it open. I can fill every chair with the people at Oyster Point and the boat community that we want this bait shop back open. So I explained all that to her. So she told me that she would let me know when the lease agreement is going back to you guys. So the day it came back to you guys, I was notified. I called your staff. They wouldn't even know that it had been returned to you, which Ms. Dale said that she had sent it over there, and she sent it to the wrong address and it went back, but now they have it again. So then today I come before you because I look at your paper and it says that it might take 5 months to make this happen. I mean, it's been 2.5 years that I've been trying this. There is nobody else that comes forward to you guys about this bait shop at all, other than me. I got the lease agreement to come back to you guys thinking that it would speed things up. And looking at the paper today, it kind of seems that it's not going to speed it up any. I mean, I've been in 2.5 years chasing this and talking to everybody about getting this bait store back open. And even the Boat and Waterway doesn't understand, because they told me to myself that they didn't even know why you guys went through all that process. You guys should have leased it out and let them notify that it's been leased out. Is what the lady, and her name is Karen Dale, is who I finally found out what the lease agreement was. So I'm back before you once again. What can I do to speed it up? I know it has to be reviewed, and it has to be where you have to find people, whatever, to see who wants to lease this. But I've been doing this for 2 years. I have not seen one soul come through that door and ask anything about this. And she has also said, Karen Dale said, when you guys are ready and you find out who is going to lease, to call her back and she'll open up and speed it right back to you guys. I mean, this is something that I spent hours on trying to get this reopened, to see that it might take 5 more months. Us fishermen, I'm a fisherman, I have my own boat. I'm out on Oyster Point a lot, and I do a lot of fishing. I talk to a lot of the boating community, and I know people that live in the harbor. Everybody wants the bay store back open, and they want the store back open, people that live in the harbor. And all I'm trying to do is get this there for all of us. It brings more money back into your thing that you're saying that you're spending all these budget money and everything. I'm trying to bring some money back into you, and I'm just getting a total runaround about this. And I don't understand why we're waiting so long to get this back open, and Boat and Waterway don't understand that. South San Francisco, I dealt with the mayor and sat with them, and they don't understand it either. They want to move forward and have this back open. They were willing to take it away from you guys and open it themselves, but you have a lease, and they can't do that. So I'm just saying, all these people that I talk to, everybody wants to get it back open. I don't know why it's taking so long. And now you have a lease agreement that's approved by Broken Waterway to go forward, and I don't know why it's taking so long to keep going that route. You know, it's a small bait store. It should be at the top, get it out the way, and it's back making money. It's sitting there 2.5 years open, non-open. It's making no money. It's just deteriorating the building. I'm sorry I took too much of your time, but I mean, like I said, I talk to a lot of people, and I go through a lot trying to get this place back open. Hopefully all of you take into consideration on what I do when we're looking forward to finding somebody to lease it. That's about all I got to say.
You said you talked to
Karen Dell.
Dill or?
Dell.
Dell.
Dell. Karen Dell was the one that's in charge of your loan at the Boat and Waterway. And that's why it was on her desk.
Okay, so we don't respond to public comment, but thank you. I would like to talk to you after the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Take the board as part of my report.
I have questions for staff.
Well, let me try to provide you with some information. On Monday,
Yeah?
sorry. I didn't know if you were clearing your throat. It's sort of a, on Monday, where we will be having a meeting to discuss what we need to do. We are ready to put the RFP out to bid. There's some discussions that we need to have about elements that are in it. The process that we were aware of was, it was at Department of Boating and Waterways. They did mail it to the wrong place. They did mail the approval letter back, and we did get it. And I think that with information in prior packets that we had that approval. So we have to go through an RFP process. I know that the district secretary spoke to one interested person, it may have been you, and explained that there has to be an RFP process. We're trying to do that as quickly as possible. My understanding, and perhaps if Karen Dill has had something else, we can talk to her about it, but my understanding is that once we have the RFP and negotiate the lease, that as long as we have that loan with the Division of Boating and Waterways, we have to go back and get approval from them for the negotiated final lease. And knowing how many months that took, that's why I think it took so long. We're, at this point, the difference between now and RFP, that has to do with some staff decisions about what we're going to do and some review. We want to make sure the district's protecting the lease. We want to make sure we look at the best options.
I think
going forward.
The biggest thing that we need to stress at this point is that the document that was been with DBW was not a lease. It was a request for proposals that they need to approve. So what they've now done is approved the request for proposals. Now we can issue the request for proposals. That RFP will be out there for a certain period of time. Anybody interested will respond to that RFP with a proposal for the use of the bait shop. This commission will then make a selection based on, I think based on that RFP, it's 72 only, not 72.2. That's what you told me. So this commission will make a decision based on return to the district, and then we'll negotiate a lease, and then we'll be up and running. So we're a little ways out yet.
If I may, the confusion, part of the confusion about the lease is that when you send the RFP package, you do send a blank draft lease with it. So there is a lease in the documents that they had, and it may not be the exact lease that we send to them after negotiation.
Where can one find the Boating and Waterways required process online? So in other words, what I'm hearing from staff is that there's this two-step process required by Boating and Waterways. The first step is that you send Boating and Waterways your draft RFP, and then they have to approve that before you can put it out, and then you have to get approval from them on the final lease. Is that correct? Is that what you're telling me?
That has been my understanding of the process.
Okay, but what I'm hearing from a member of the public is different. From the public, I'm hearing that, no, we do not need to run the draft RFP by Boating and Waterways. We just put the RFP out, and then we run the draft lease by Boating and Waterways. Now, if I had to guess which one was correct, I'm going with a member of the public on this. Because when I've talked to Boating and Waterways, the process has not sounded as complicated as the staff has made it. So where can I find clarity on this topic? Because if we're doing a two-step process and we really only need to be doing a one-step process, what we're doing is we're delaying filling empty lease spaces, which is costing the district and the public money. And
Well, and I may have misspoken then regarding the existence of the lease as a part of the RFP package. So in that case, now the lease form has been approved. I don't know then in that case whether or not the actual terms of the lease that are negotiated as a part of the contract after the RFP would need to be approved. But presumably we would not then change any of the lease language, because any change would trigger an additional review by the Division of Boating and Waterways.
This is a statutory requirement, not a regulatory guidance from the Department of Boating and Waterways, and this is something that the district has had some experience with in the past before I came on board, so there's some historical documents that confirm the statutory requirement, which is crystal clear that the Department of Boating and Waterways must approve the RFP, which, as Glenn explained, includes a draft of the lease. Then you issue the RFP. Then the commission awards the lease to the highest bidder on the lease. And then prior to the effectiveness of the lease, the Department of Boating and Waterways has to provide a second round of approval. It is cumbersome, it is perhaps inefficient, but that is what the statute requires.
then why is Karen Dill saying that that's not what's required?
I don't know that Karen Dill is saying that that's not what's required.
Well, can we find out? Because
We talked to
where are
Karen
we
Dill.
getting this statutory?
We talked to Karen Dill when we sent items up there. And I just want to point out, and I'm not trying to get into who's right, who's wrong here, but looking at it from my perspective, and I admit not being, I rely on our legal counsel for advice as how to proceed. I'm not an expert in Division of Boating Waterways rules, but when we sent these items to Karen, if we didn't need to, why, instead of doing a long review that took months, and then say to me, hey, we got it off my desk, now our lawyer is doing a long review, knowing how behind in their work they are, why would Division of Boating and Waterways not have said, oh, you don't need to send this to us?
Well, that's a really good
Instead,
question.
yeah, so I feel that confirms what counsel has said.
Well, where's the statutory business? How do we find?
All right,
this?
perhaps we're going to be adjourning in about 30 seconds.
Thank you.
So I would say perhaps we could recall, talk to Karen Dill. In the meantime, is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second?
Okay, the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.